I'd like to thank everybody for coming out this morning in this beautiful weather we're having up here in Northwest Arkansas, but we greatly appreciate your attendance. We hope you will take away something that will be very valuable to you and to your organization. Um, my name is Steve Guntharp. I'm the Deputy Director with the Department of Workforce Services. I would first like to thank all of our partners in today's endeavor, the Northwest Arkansas Council, Springdale Chamber of Commerce, the Rogers-Lowell Chamber of Commerce, Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce, Siloam Springs Chamber of Commerce, Greater Bentonville Area Chamber of Commerce, Northwest Arkansas Economic Development District, the United States Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship, and the Department of Career Education State Office of Apprenticeship. Today we're here to learn about the apprenticeship program and how it can help grow and maintain employees within an organization. It's a very valuable tool to help in growing your business and retaining employees throughout. We have Mark McManus here with the Department of Workforce Services. He will be here to explain later how federal dollars can help with an apprenticeship program within your organization. We also have a response card that in their chair, Mark, response card in their chair, in their packet. You have a packet. Please look for a response card. We encourage you to fill it out and submit it by the end of the day. We also have experts here within the room that will help be able to answer any questions you may have. Next, I'd like to introduce our special guest of honor. He's a product of South Arkansas, Magnolia Way, graduate of Hendrix College and Tulane School of Law, U.S. Army Reserve for over 20 years with the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, has served President George W. Bush as a special assistant to the President, as well as the Deputy Director of Political Affairs. Was appointed U.S. Attorney for the 2nd District of Arkansas, was elected to the United States House of Representatives for the 2nd District of Arkansas. In 2014 was elected the 20th Lieutenant Governor, and just this past November was elected to his 2nd term. And sometime during that impressive and exhausting resume, he found time to get married and have 3 wonderful children. Part of the Lieutenant Governor's 3 major priorities outside of more parental control in education, reforming state government, which he played a very important role in this past legislative session in passing state transformation legislation, is his desire to grow the economic development through job growth. I can personally speak on his passion for job creation because over 20 years ago, when I was a naive college graduate looking for my first employment, he was my first boss. He hired me, gave me my first job, which basically has led me here today. So I can attest to his passion for job creation. But let me introduce our Lieutenant Governor, Tim Griffin.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all. So, thank you for having me. I'm glad you're here. It is critically important that you be here and be forward-leaning and engaged on this issue, because this is the apprenticeship program. The apprenticeship concept is really how we're going to get our Kansans ready for jobs. We got a lot of jobs without workers in those jobs. And I'm going to do like a 30-second history lesson. We've come full circle on apprenticeships. Decades and decades and decades ago, when there wasn't an academic institution on every corner or a 2-year college or whatever, the way you learned a job is apprenticeship. That's how you did it. We weren't sitting around as employers saying, well, we're just going to wait for the government to get them all ready and send them our way. That's not how it worked. You got individuals who or engaged in an apprenticeship, and they learned whatever it was that they were learning, and that got them on the path to a career. So as we developed as a country, got more academic institutions, got more official sort of training schools and technical schools, 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges, etc., the apprenticeship concept sort of went to the wayside, and we did sort of just wait for the institutions, the government, to provide the workers. Well, that doesn't work in a very, very fast-moving, dynamic, complex economy. And if you think about it, it makes sense that it doesn't work. This command and control concept, the fact, the idea that government is going to somehow be able to keep tabs on everything that's going on across the world in the economy, is just, it's a crazy idea. There's no way that's going to happen. And you know what? We've seen that it can't happen. It can't happen. It would be the equivalent to having government decide what every family eats for dinner that fits them every night. Think about that. Think about that. How would that work? Government said, we're going to decide, and we're going to individually decide for each family in the United States, every meal, what they should have. Wouldn't happen. That's command and control. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in totalitarian parts of the world. It won't work here. It won't work. There's no way, with the diversity and complexity in this room, that the government can meet your needs on this front. So, my old buddy, Alex Acosta, I think I knew him before I knew you, Steve. He's the Secretary of Labor now. He loves the apprenticeship concept because it takes the power and gives it back to you. It takes the initiative and gives it back to you. So in a good old American kind of way, instead of getting a cookie cutter trained individual, you're going to get exactly what you need for your job, the job that you're trying to fill for your company. Now, I want to be real clear. Government plays an important partnership role here. They organize this. There are federal tax credits and other federal benefits and things to you doing this, incentives that you're going to learn about. So the government plays an important role here because the government can bring resources together in a way that an individual company may not be able to, and can bring this room together, for example, in a way that maybe you couldn't. So our state government and our federal government plays a role here. Our academic institutions play a critical role. Not as the arbiter of what you need. You got to tell them. But as an entity that has a view of the state or a region in the state and sort of sees trends and can help facilitate training and can match people with employers, that's an important role. And good to see Tyson up here on the front. Yeah, I was down in Cossatot. Who's heard of Cossatot? Okay, yeah, some of you have. It's down in southwest Arkansas. I think that's an old Native American term for like something, skull crusher, right? Yeah, well, in any event, that is the name of the U of A at Cossatot. And I went down there, and what's happening there is you have workforce folks from Little Rock teaming up with Tyson, teaming up with local employers, all getting together and saying, look, this is what we need at Tyson, or fill in the employer. You've got this building, local school district, not being used. You've got some grant money, state folks, And you get all this together and it starts to work. You were there, weren't you? You were down there. I know you were. That's what we're here for. And so this is not a blip on the screen. I'm here to tell you, this is where training, the world of training workers, certifying workers, training workers, equipping workers, reskilling, retooling, whatever your words are, the future of it is more employer-centric, which is good because less cookie cutter, more what you need specifically. And in fact, there's some recent research out that I was reading on the web on the way up here that confirms exactly what I'm saying, particularly in the digital space. In industries where developments are moving very, very rapidly, government, as just a fact, is not nimble enough to pivot and keep up. They're just not. And so this white paper says, yes, there's a role for academic institutions to be a part of this leadership and the government to be a part of this leadership. But this white paper basically concludes that the private sector wants the workers that they want, specifically what they want. The private sector's got to help lead on this. The private sector and you individually for your company, you know what you need better than anybody in the government. But the government can marshal resources. So we take what you have, your intimate knowledge of your company, and we couple it with the resources and capabilities of the state and federal government and academic institutions, and that's a combination that wins. And I can just tell you, 10 years from now, we're going to be doing more of this, not less. And so this is really where we need to be going. And it's sort of like, this really arose out of a frustration that I alluded to earlier, where a lot of private sector folks were just employers, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, which, by the way, are the biggest job creators. All size businesses are important, but we can't. Small businesses, medium-sized, often don't have the resources that the others do to find the talent they need, and we get that. But a lot of this arose out of a frustration. People were looking around going, I'm waiting on people to come to me who have the skills I need for my business, and they're not coming. And so a lot of private sector folks, some in this room that I've been at events with, they said, you know what? We're not waiting on you. We're not waiting on you any longer. Whether it be academic institution or whatever, we're going to work alongside you, but we're going to grab you by the hand and say, this is what we need, and we need you to help get it done. And don't be scared, because we're going to direct you to exactly what we need. And in the end, we're all going to be better off for it. And the good news is the state, like Department of Workforce Services and the academic institutions and others, they haven't fought it. They've said, hey, we want to be a willing partner. We want to be there for you. And so if you're asking yourself, how did I get here and why am I here? That's sort of the backdrop. That's sort of the backdrop. We got people like you who want to grow more jobs in this awesome state, but you're frustrated sometimes that you can't find your workers. And so instead of employers sitting around just waiting and going, well, guess I'll just keep waiting, which is a very un-American thing, we say, you know what? If you're not going to do it, we're going to do it. And we don't mind your help. In fact, we want your help, but we're going to do this ourselves. And you know what? That's a great thing. It is classically American that the private sector and the market lead on what the market needs. Who knows better what the market needs than the market? No one. And so I am so happy to see this full room. We're going to do a bunch of these, aren't we? Around the state, different places. Yeah, I'd like to go to as many as I can, because let me just tell you, this is so important. I get so tired, and it's not people's fault. I get so tired of seeing job openings that we can't fill. We used to just beg to have jobs, and we still want all the good jobs we can get. But now we've got jobs that we can't find workers for. What the heck? You know? So thank y'all for being here. Thank you for giving me some of that coffee out there that I think has octane in it. I was basically a dead man when I walked in here. Now I'm just on fire with some caffeine. So thank y'all. This is a good deal. If I could ever support you in any way, to help cut through bureaucracy or whatever, let me know. These folks don't work for me. I'm elected separately from the governor, but we work together a lot. And obviously, I've known Steve a long time, so I know a lot of stuff on him. But let me give you my cell phone. If you ever need me, want to call, wonder what the weather's like in Little Rock, whatever, 501-837-5190. 501-837-5190. Thank you all for being here. Let's stick with this. Let's lean forward. And if you find there are parts of this that you think ought to be different, let us know, and let's see if we can adapt, because this is the future of your businesses and the future of our state. Thank y'all.
Well, one more time, and I'll be brief. Good morning. For those of you that I don't know, I'm Joe Rollins. I'm the Workforce Development Director with the Northwest Arkansas Council. In my previous life, I was an educator and fully believe in exactly what we're here to do today. Like many of you, I've been to several meetings, gatherings where we talk about the problem, and then we leave with as many questions as we do answers. Today is not intended to be one of those days. We have the people in the room from the state level. We have our department program managers from the state level. We have our employers in the room. We have our chamber leaders in the room. We have the people here to make the difference. And we certainly have our educational programs represented too. So on behalf of everybody on that screen, and even the folks who aren't, thank you for being here and being a part of the conversation. The role that I play, I want to be the conduit for you. There's a network being built even in this room yesterday for a network of registered apprenticeship programs in this region. I'm glad to play matchmaker, coordinator, connector for you, because to the employers in the room, we all understand the skills gap conversation. It's real. I'll tell you, the real gap that we see in Northwest Arkansas is as much awareness and experience as it is anything else. There are certain ways that you can get that experience, and I think we're here today to talk about it. To the employers in the room, I think if we can fill those experience gaps, those awareness gaps certainly, that'll help you fill some of the gaps that you deal with in culture and most certainly employment. So I know we have some great panels set up today. We have events going on around the region in the future, and you're going to get information from us about how to be a part of that. And please accept this invitation to plug in, to be as active a role as you can be, because until we bring this network together forward, we're going to keep having the same conversation. Today's the day to move that needle forward. We have people in the room who are ready to answer questions and help us talk about the action steps that we need to take to get there. Let's make today a very positive day, and please let me be a resource to you going forward. So thank you again for being here. It's going to be a great morning. Mark, please.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Mark McManus. I'm with the Arkansas Department of Workforce Services, and one of the things that I want to do today is make everyone aware of some federal grant funding opportunities that Department of Workforce Services has received through the Department of Labor. So these grant funds are workforce development funds that are focused on registered apprenticeship expansion in the state. And what that means is we have some training dollars that are available to support some of the registered apprenticeship workforce development activities that you all have and can have. just know that those grant funds, we want to be good stewards of those funds, and we're looking to partner with employers to assist you in filling the skill gaps and talent needs that you have. So what we'd like for you to do, if you have some more interest in that and learning more about that, please get with me, fill out our next step response card. Be glad to follow up with you and have you learn more about those opportunities. So I would invite you to do that. One of the things that I certainly kind of came into learning more about registered apprenticeship through these grants, certainly, and learning more through all the collaborative partnerships that we work with is, registered apprenticeship's been around a long time. It's a earn and learn model that has been very successful, certainly successful in our construction trades, things like electricians, plumbers, carpentry, you name, you go down the list. Those occupations and industries are still expanding and growing, and there's needs there. But what I want you to understand is there is opportunities in every industry sector. There's opportunities in many, many occupations. We can see that. There's examples of that across the nation. There's examples of that in our state. We're beginning to grow that part of our sectors in registered apprenticeship more and more. We have some of our panelists today are good examples of that. And so, just know that registered apprenticeship could be an option for some of your workforce development needs. One of the things I would like to do is kind of set the stage for what we're going to be learning today. This is a good video from the Markle Foundation that kind of expresses a lot of what we're learning and we'll be talking about today. So, David, are you over there?
America's really going through the largest change in its economy since the time of the Industrial Revolution. And so many Americans don't feel that they understand what their place is in this new economy.
There are 7.3 million fewer jobs in America today held by people with a high school diploma or less than there were in 1989. And in some ways, the single most important question for all of us in this country is, how do we move forward without leaving some people behind?
For decades, we've been telling people, get a college degree and you'll be able to compete for the growth jobs with higher incomes. Today, it's not necessary that that be the singular path that people take.
Skills aren't always measured by a diploma. They're measured by the experience that you gain and the type of training that you receive.
What I'm seeing and hearing is that there's a fear that jobs are going away and there's not enough opportunities out there. But we see that in the trade sector, there's been a huge increase in openings for employment, but there's not enough skilled labor to fill those roles.
In healthcare, people always assume there's only two people that work in the hospitals, and that's doctors and nurses, but you have a gamut of different occupations: cardiovascular technician, surge tech, IT, health information.
The real opportunity is to look to the middle of the graph, to the so-called middle-skilled jobs, and to equip more people to hold those kinds of middle-skilled jobs, and then to create more of those jobs.
So a skills-based labor market makes it possible for people to see career paths that they didn't realize were open to them before. We found people like a FedEx truck driver in her early 40s, and she doesn't know what the digital economy holds for her. And through online tools, she can see that she has a lot of the skills for a higher tech, higher paying job with very few additional hours of training.
We need to change hiring practices, which is part of what Skillful's doing. Working on the ground, meeting with businesses, showing them how to do more of a skills-focused hiring.
87% of Americans believe that skills training throughout one's lifetime is necessary in order to succeed.
We have a role. It's not just to sit back and hire people coming out of our college system or even our high schools. We need to do more training in apprenticeships.
People say, well, what if you train these people and they leave? We say, well, what if you don't train them and they stay?
Employers have to do more. Those of us in the tech sector need to create tools that will help people do more. Educational institutions, governments, and frankly, most importantly, all of us have an individual responsibility to do more in terms of learning more.
Well, one of the things that we hope you have takeaways in the meeting today is we have a lot of knowledge in the room about registered apprenticeships, so we want you to ask all your questions, get them answered. There will be opportunities for that in our breakout sessions, and certainly we'll have some Q&A during our panel too, so we want those questions answered for you. There's a couple of people who I'd like to acknowledge and then maybe invite them to make a few comments talking about some of our registered apprenticeship knowledge that we have in the room. Mr. Lee Price, there you are. Lee is with the U.S. Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship. He's a state director. He's located in Little Rock, and Lee's a good guy to get to know. He's the one who approves all of the registered apprenticeship activity in the state. And then also in the back of the room, we have Mr. Randy Prather, and Randy is with the State Office of Apprenticeship located in Little Rock. And like to come forward, Randy? Okay. Okay.
Thank you. It's good to see y'all this morning here, and I'm excited about the things that you can learn today. I wanted, by a show of hands, how many people learn to do a task by someone else showing them how to do it? Raise your hand. Wow. See there? And that's some form of apprenticeship. My grandma made the best coconut pie in the world. My mom couldn't. And finally, Dad talked Mom into getting with Grandma and said, have your mother teach you how to make that coconut pie. Now, it wasn't an easy task, but myself, I rode on a combine and tractor for years with my grandpa. He showed me all the ins and outs of running that combine and tractors and things on the farm. That's apprenticeship. Had a journey person teaching me how to do the job. One day he turned me loose, said, have at it, you know. So with that said, there are a lot of people in this room here today. With the National Apprenticeship Training Foundation, we got Karen Brashears here. Karen, if you'll just raise your hand. We got Kelly Sharp with Northwest Arkansas Plumbing's here today. Got Michael Dewberry with the Western Arkansas Apprenticeship Program, and got Sherry Overstreet with the Arkansas College of Electricity. And we have a lot of people here you can pick their brains today, okay? Again, thank you for coming. Thank you.
Lee, would you like to come up?
I'm Lee Price again with U.S. Department of Labor. Pardon my voice, the allergies here in Arkansas kicking my butt this time of year. But I'm the guy that if I will help you create your program. I will approve your program, and I'll be a consultant for your program for the life of the program. All the folks that were mentioned here just then, plus a lot more in the room, there's a lot more that weren't. Mark and Randy offices, we're all a team. We all want to see this thing succeed. It's been an exciting time in apprenticeship in the last few years. There is a lot of money incentives to help create programs. The state of Arkansas makes it very, very favorable to continue programs. There's continuation funds for your programs, for reimbursement of instructors and materials and equipment and that sort of stuff if that qualify for apprenticeship. There's tax incentives from the state of Arkansas. There is, on the federal side, there's Davis-Bacon relief, which gives you a competitive edge in federal contracts when you apply for them if you have apprentices working. There are a lot of financial incentives. The big incentive, though, is that you are training the person that you're going to eventually have as an employee, and you're training them the way you want to train them, okay? There's a lot of ways we can take these things. There's approved work processes. There's approved related technical instruction. They're very general. You can train them the way that you want to train them for your company and take that in any direction that you want to go. I will work with you any way that I can to create the program you want as an employer. An employer can also be a sponsor of a program. There's programs out here now that you can become part of by signing an employer agreement with an established program. But apprenticeship is a gold standard in training people skills. We have over 1,300 occupations that are already approved. There's a means to approve other occupations. It takes more time to do that, but we can get that done also. We had probably, there were about 3,200 apprentices in the state about 4 years ago. Today we're approaching 6,000. We had 83 programs in the state 4 years ago. Today we are approaching 100, we have about 130. I say about because I've had 3 programs coming in that have signatures on them since I've been here yesterday. So it's something that is increasing rapidly. If I told you that you could start training, making anywhere from $50,000 to $60,000 to $70,000 a year for a 1 to 4 year program, that you are an employee of that program, you're being paid while you're completing that program, and you're going to get a certification at the end signed by the Secretary of Labor saying you are a journeyman in that occupation, would you be interested? Sometimes I think I'm in the wrong business. But it is a great incentive. These kids come out, they are trained, and not all kids, but they're trained. They know that they're a journeyman in the occupation. It ranges from construction to IT to medical to advanced manufacturing to there's energy, there's several other sectors of excellence, and we've got other things out there too. We're working on a turf management program right now for golf courses and football fields and baseball fields. Okay, so there's a lot of things that we can do. We can create a lot of programs, and I will work with you any way we can. You basically have to write a set of standards for your program. It's got to be agreed on by you and me. You sign them, I sign them, and I give you access to the database for registered apprentices, and you're off and running. You have a program. Okay? Anybody, I'll be around here all day today. Anybody that has any questions, please come on up, and if I don't know the answer, I'll find somebody that does.
There's another individual I'd like to introduce, and you could come forward, Lonnie. This is Mr. Lonnie Emmerd. This will lead into our panel session, by the way. Lonnie's going to be facilitating that. But we at ADWS have been working with Lonnie for close to, I guess, 2 years now. Yep. And Lonnie has done a lot of work, not only in Arkansas, but in several states with registered apprenticeship growth and expansion activities. And he's recognized a subject matter expert in his field by the Department of Labor, and we're fortunate to work with him, and he's provided a lot of good activities for us in terms of understanding better where opportunities may lie and engaging with employers. So with that, Lonnie, I'll just hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mark. I get the good fortune of transitioning you from some really great presentations already, certainly starting with the Lieutenant Governor, really setting the stage for why are you here today and what's the goal for the day. So I come representing business because that's what I did for 35 years. Most recently, executive at Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina. We did more IT apprenticeships than any other company in the country. Started that over 15 years ago. So what I learned very quickly was that the important thing for you to remember today is that we're not here to talk to you about a program of the month. This is not some flavor of the month, hey, look what we got. We're trying to sell you something. For me, I learned it firsthand. I know some of you in the audience, we're going to have a panel that's going to speak to this same thing. But you learn from experience that says this is a business strategy, right? You heard the Lieutenant Governor set the stage. You heard others talk about it. Randy's experienced it. Karen's experienced it. The point we want to make is that you have to identify what you need to do to be successful. And when it comes to the idea of attracting talent, developing talent, and retaining that talent, there are some things that have been proven by others that we want you to know about. We want you to ask every question possible, turn over every rock, and figure out, does that apply to me? Does that apply to our company, right? And the kind of folks we need to hire and what kind of successful talent program we want to have. So I know many of you in the audience may come from the operations side of your business. Some of you may come from the HR side. That's a good thing, because what you've already heard from people this morning is the fact that it takes a village, right? This concept is the fact that while the Lieutenant Governor said it's your responsibility, right? My responsibility is business. But the idea of knowing there's an ecosystem, or that there's partners, that there's people that are going to play roles in this process between finding that talent, because guess what? If an employer moves a little further back in the continuum saying, I'm not waiting for the educational system to produce everything I ever thought I needed. If we're going to move closer down that continuum, the idea is that the pipeline of the pool, I will say, of people is going to be bigger, but it's going to be different. It's not going to be where you found it before, right? It's going to be underrepresented populations. I represent IT. Why not more females in IT? What do we got to do differently? Whether that's rural folks, veterans, whether that's previously incarcerated, people who have capability, but we don't know how to connect the dots, right? I think the labor group and Department of Workforce Services does a great job of thinking about supply. But what I found across the country, and you kind of heard it from the Lieutenant Governor, was the fact that that doesn't necessarily mean that that connects to business. Industry, we bring the demand. We know what we need. How do we create that wonderful intersection? Where does that match happen? It used to happen later in the process, and we're saying now, if it happens sooner, what are some of the detailed questions that I need to ask and figure out what changes? What changes about where their salary starts? What changes about how we start to invest more in developing them ourselves? How does that change in terms of progression, career path, right? And all the things that I hope we're going to answer those questions for you today. Because I've seen it happen across multiple occupations and multiple sectors. This state has a wonderful opportunity to bridge off of the great success that has already happened. But at the same time, there's going to be a lot of folks in the audience, there's going to be people on the panel that are going to talk to you about occupations that are somewhat unfamiliar territory in using apprenticeship. It just is. You know, the message to be had here was, this is for all occupations. Why? Because you heard it. How many of us have basically, and I don't want to reiterate everything you heard, had to learn how to do something by mirroring and being mentored and being coached by someone else? All of us at one time or another. So there is a process by which this works really smoothly. We don't want you to feel like, oh my gosh, we're starting from scratch. You know, the burden's on us, figure this out. Oh my gosh, this is a big task. Because I've heard people say, oh, that sounds good, but what's the ROI on that? Well, we're going to answer some of those questions, right? You got to think about what are all those kinds of things that you really do want to ask and you want to get the answer. So before I bring our panel up here, I want to reiterate that you have a next step card. I think that was in everybody's packet. It's been commented on before. The goal of today, if there's 160 people in this room, is that we get 160 cards back that says, you know, if you really aren't interested, tell us. You know, we won't waste your time, and other folks that are involved here will move on to the folks that say they really want to do something. But it's important that if you want to take that next step, you know, it won't happen in a group of 160 people. It's going to happen in the conference room at Simmons Bank, right? And you're going to get the right people in the room between HR and payroll and legal and your operations folks and the champion and trainers and recruiters. And you know what? And maybe if you're a small company, you don't even have all those people. It might even be one person. But the point is that that's where you're going to determine, is this right for us? What's this going to look like for us? And then you can ask even more detailed questions and find out who are some of these partners. Who's going to assist with acquiring talent or handle the audience? Who's going to handle content? Who is going to be our training providers? Who does it well? Do we have an inventory of choices, or is it just one? And if it's one, great. If it's several, then you know it's even better potentially. And then what's your delivery? Nobody is forcing you down a path of some cookie cutter template that says, well, this is the way. Lee will work with you on standards, but those standards just get you that common consistency. The bottom line is you control the way it rolls out. You're going to control how sustainable it's going to be. And then the final piece is, in the end, right, as a state, as a community, as Northwest Arkansas, as a company, this thing is going to roll out in a momentous kind. It'll be momentum. It's already building. I mean, I'm from the outside. I'm still here from South Carolina watching from afar, if you will. And the kinds of things that I think represent this kind of momentum curve is going on here. And I'm sure from an economic development point of view, Joe, it's happening in Northwest Arkansas. So now how do you couple that growth with what is inevitably going to be a concern, and that is, how are we going to grow successfully? At Blue Cross Blue Shield, South Carolina, when I got there in 2002, they had 1,100 IT folks. We grew to 2,500 in 5 years. That was painful, but you know what? We would not have been able to do it without the introduction of a program like this. And I'll plant one seed in your mind before we bring the panel up. This is not just for entry level. We talk a lot about the fact that that's a way to onboard and attract. But the whole concept of apprenticeship for us worked as succession management. There are other people in our organization filling jobs today that was because they were mentored. It was actually a plan for how they were going to progress through the organization. And that kind of journeyman, master, apprentice relationship, it works all the way through an organization. So think about that, but let's don't get ahead of ourselves. Let's just get started. So if I could right now have our panelists come on up. I think everybody's here except, did we hear maybe LaRonda Rainey might not have been able to make it up here from Little Rock. So, no, you guys, yeah. I wasn't going to feel like you had to be. So we're pretty fortunate today to have this wonderful group here. The plan is this. I'm going to ask each of these individuals to kind of, and some of them may be known to you already, but I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, tell you kind of who they are, what their current title is, tell a little bit about your history as you personally, set the stage for, there's some tremendous credentials up here, so we'll have them kind of introduce themselves, and once they all do that, then we're going to proceed to kind of ask them some questions about the things that hopefully you're thinking about and what they dealt with back when they were sitting in your seat. And then we'll progress through that. And as you guys come up with additional questions, by all means, the goal of this day is to engage you. So feel free to any questions, fair game. Fair enough? Okay, let's go ahead and start.
Senior
Bill.
citizens first.
Sure, Bill.
So Bill Yoder, spent most of my life in the financial IT fintech area. CIO of a very small bank, and then did large outsourcing contracts for Alltel Information that's now FIS, and then Axiom. The one thing that I think we might think about today that I learned on those jobs is you got to have the best people on your team. And what we're here to figure out, how do we get more of the best people on our team? That's how we grow, and that's how we compete and keep our clients happy, right? So today, I'm the executive director of Arkansas Center for Data Science. It's a brand new 501(c), and the mission is kind of the same. Our responsibility is to try to grow the talent pipeline within the IT, computer science, data science industry. And I'm glad to be here and look forward to our discussion. Thanks.
Well, good morning. I'm Paul Kahneman, and I left the room at the wrong time in a meeting and found myself responsible for technology analytics and everything else that everyone else didn't want at Simmons Bank. My official title is I'm the Chief Information Officer there at Simmons Bank, and for those of you who may know Simmons, it's been an institution in Arkansas since 1903, has grown from a small community bank to today. We just passed the $18 billion mark, just finished another acquisition. In the process of doing all that, of course, the workforce has expanded significantly. The technology workforce has expanded significantly. When I joined Simmons several years ago, we went from about 50 individuals in the technology area to today over 125. So later on, as we go through the panel, I'll talk to you about there's a reason that we got involved in the apprenticeship program. If you trying to find that many people in that short a time, what we decided is never again. By way of background, I've split my time between industry, being in the technology area, chief information officer at other companies, and then I was a hired gun for many years. You know, that dirty name that everyone has as a consultant. So I was able to sit on both sides of the fence and and learn a lot that taught me, is what was already been said. You know, when we think about business, what matters most, the difference in business, when you think about the products you have, the services you have, every one of those products, every one of those services result from a carbon-based life form. It's the human beings, it is the people that make a difference in the business, and getting the right people and getting the people that align with your business culture makes all the difference in the world.
I think I know most of the people in the room, and them just having me confined. Did y'all notice when I sit down immediately, like, you know, can I get away? Being confined on a panel like this, I'm kind of like some of the other ones. I like being up, walking around. Karen Bashir's with the National Apprenticeship Training Foundation. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on what day of the week it is, I do wear a lot of hats. The people that actually pay my salary is the National Apprenticeship Training Foundation. I also work with a lot of different employment agencies, workforce service departments, high school programs, pre-apprenticeship, registered apprenticeship. We're kind of a unique organization. Just in the state of Arkansas, we work with about 2,000 different employers administering their registered apprenticeship program for them. We work with everything from mom and pop shops that only has 5 or 6 employees, they've only got 1 or 2 apprentices, up to huge corporations where we may have 400 or 500 apprentices. And if you, first and foremost, you know, we keep talking about the people that are in the room and the people that can offer you the advice that you need. But the people that's most important in this room right now are the employers. If you're an employer and you're in this room, would you please stand up? Guys, those people right there are the driving force behind any apprenticeship program that you want to start. And that's what makes these programs, whether it's one of my 2,000 employers or a new employer, you can do training programs, everything from a certified nursing assistant up to a full-fledged tool and die maker that's a 5-year training program. But those employers that just stood up, they're the ones that determine what kind of training you're going to receive, what kind of people they're trying to put into the program, and they can even design it in such a way that, you know, I guarantee you, if you ask them right now, do they not only have job openings that they can't fill, but they have people in-house. They may be an excellent production worker, but they need their skill level raised up to the next level. Through a registered apprenticeship program, that will allow you to go in, do a skills assessment of your existing workforce, find out where they're at on that scale right now, and you can give them credit for the registered apprenticeship program and just provide the training they need to move them to the next step. You don't have to train people on skills they've already mastered. Why would you spend your money, time, and energy and their money? In a nutshell, that's basically the goal, the mission, and if you can hear from the tone in my voice, yes, I'm very passionate about it. But we focus on the needs of the industry because this is an employer-driven program. The other apprenticeship programs that were in the audience this morning, they can tell you the same thing. If you don't know who to link to, you can simply go to arkansas.apprenticeship.com. It'll list you every registered apprenticeship program in the state, where they're located, and it changes every day because we keep adding more and more occupations. Lee made the comment earlier, we had a conversation out in the hallway because I'm getting ready to add 4 more programs in the next probably 2 weeks. So that should show you kind of how it's expanding.
Also, I'm watching everybody actively engage in station today. What a great looking group of folks here. And it's the seats you're in that support youth and education and workforce that truly make the difference. And I don't know if you realize that whenever it's happening, but I had a high school experience with 3 ag teachers, and Carol Shaver was one of them. So out of the 3 teachers, 2 of them got me jobs. And those jobs lasted up into 20 years of my adult life, and was a segue for me to become an ag teacher. So I know just the opportunities that we have. I realize we're supposed to introduce ourselves, but I'm going to say it doesn't matter who I am or who I work for. What matters are the people And the difference is the impact that you don't realize you're making whenever you're doing the right thing. And so I love apprenticeship conversation. It is, to me, the oldest model of a workforce talent development that has been even back in biblical days of apprenticeship. And I love that model. I've seen it done by experts. You know, I'd leave my classroom and I'd watch Bob Maples come in, and he was coming in after being out in the field working with electrical all day long, and Bob would come in and have his adults come back at night, and he was passing the torch. He was carrying the gauntlet forward. And so many of you I have personal experiences with, both as an educator. I did work in the field. I worked at George's processing for 20 years as a maintenance and refrigeration person. I did that job through college, high school, college, and my first 10 years as an ag teacher. Somebody in the room talked me into, and don't act like you're not listening to me, Jason. Somebody in the room over there talked me into switching vocations midstream, to convert me from an ag teacher into an industrial maintenance technician trainer. And I think it was at the prompting of another guy in the room. I'm trying to point out all the people that have caused me all these challenges in the years, but Simmons Foods and McKee, and a lot of the folks that came together to start a program in Silent Springs that was initiated by, gotta look around the corner to catch Lisa on the side, that started what has become my future career. And promoting a partnership that start with chambers of commerce like we had in Silent Springs, starting with the connections of the employers. And I always think about when do you go to the doctor? You know, most of us wait till we have a pain, and we still don't go. We wait till we can't stand the pain before we make that appointment. And I think that's where we've been as an industry, is we wait till we just have a pain we can't live with any longer before we do something about it. And so apprenticeship is that model of bringing that together. And I'm really thankful to have an opportunity to speak with you, and I absolutely see more people qualified in the audience to be here than me, but thank you for allowing us to participate.
Thank you for your great opening comments. You can see that we've got just a wealth of both talent, but obviously a broad brush of coverage as it relates to occupations. So prior to this next question, let me just have some of you, I know it's a large group and you probably maybe are unwilling to say things in front of a large audience, but of those employers, throw out an occupation that's the most important one for you to hire or look at right now, maybe one you struggle with. Anybody?
Quality inspector.
Quality inspector.
Teller.
Teller. Maintenance. Tool and die. Surveyor. Say that one again? TIG welder. Great. Testing coordinator. That sounds like a technical job. Automation technician. Refrigeration. Wow, there's a new one. Certified interpreter. I love it. Process control technicians. Cybersecurity specialists. Anyway, you can see that this kind of runs across multiple occupations, multiple industry sectors, but most importantly, it's in your company, and it's what you have a need for. And what I'm going to have them share is what got them started. What was that pain point? What was that? And I know, Karen, you might be able to talk to a number of those, but each of the others, pick a specific one, why that relates to where our set of questions is going to go about where are you going to find these folks? What about the audience? What about the pipeline of talent? So I'll start with you, Mike, and you can pick one of those that you got expanding right now at Tyson, or,
Think about the TIG welder comment, the automation, the maintenance, the refrigeration. We, at Tyson, put all that underneath one canopy, and we call it industrial maintenance. Our skilled trades, the people that come in that often take 5 to 10 years to develop. Those are the skills that really a lot of apprenticeship existing has fell under, whether it's an electrician or plumber or HVAC. So we put all those together, and for our company, we have 10,000 team members across the nation and in other countries as well that are really the limiting reactant. They're the event that we've got to have that's a contingency that it sometimes impedes our growth. So obviously we've been a company that's focused on product and process and customer, but then we take a step back and realize, what about the people that run these more automated processes? So I watched this happen all the way through my my workforce and working for George's and teaching high school during the day and even teaching adults at night through all the different companies in Silent Springs. But it was the skilled trades, and it's always been a weakness in the area. And so it's because people don't know how to spell TIG sometimes. You know, I heard that, well, what's that? And people don't realize that if you're going to weld stainless steel in 304 capacity, you better know how to weld TIG, and you get one chance to do it right. And so the fourth industrial revolution is we're entering into, the Internet of Things and augmented reality and virtual reality and all the different types of technology is changing the face of production. Today it's, the phrase I like to use is more better, and I realize it's not grammatically correct, but if you'll indulge me just for a minute, the ways that we make profit as a company is we either make more or we make it better. And so we've done that for a long time, but more better is the strategy that we've got to be able to do in apprenticeship, is to make more of them, better qualified and a better process. And so I like that phrase, I used to correct my kids that it wasn't grammatically correct, that more better is not right. I come to realize that's the pain point that I've had, is we need more and we need to be better.
Mike, that's great. I want to bridge off of what he said about where things are headed and relate that to this idea that the advancement of technology is sitting at the core of a lot of those things you just mentioned. Now, some roles more, some roles less. But as that ties to what sits behind all of IoT and so forth is software development. And so, Paul, that's an area, whether it be in banking or energy or manufacturing, or I could go down the list, insurance, healthcare, whatever, software development sits at the core. So tell us a little bit about what got you started in thinking about apprenticeship.
Well, I think the Lieutenant Governor described it well. We were in the position of having a lot of jobs to fill and just couldn't find people to fill. Quite simple. In the jobs we were looking at, it was ranging everything from where do you find someone who is a data scientist who understands the modeling techniques associated with how you model risk at a multi-state, multi-product bank and financial institution. And then on the other end, how do you find individuals in the cybersecurity area who understand moving into a world of technology where at the bank we don't operate any of our technology. Everything is operated for us by somebody else. And how do you secure what is your data, the most prized possession that you have? How do you secure that? Looking for that type of talent was difficult. It was exceedingly difficult. And what we found is we had to go outside the state. When you start to go outside the state, the apprenticeship program made sense to us for two very important reasons. One was economic. Okay? When we have to hire someone from outside the state, the minimum cost for us by the time we do recruiting, by the time we relocate that person, the minimum cost, regardless of the level, and when you start talking more senior, it adds up, but regardless of that, is $50,000. For that same $50,000, for less than that same $50,000, I can take the long-term play and say I can hire people from within the state that know us, and I can mold that person along the way to say this is really what we need for not only the technology skill set, but for who we are as a bank. So for us, I had to do a short-term play, which is find people wherever I could. We made the decision, never again. We're just not going to do that. So for us, it's a long-term strategic play that says if I can lower my costs over time with individuals who are here. The other thing is, as you bring in individuals, now they don't always stay with you, right? So if I can have individuals who are there from the very beginning and who form an attachment, not just with the institution, but with the people that have mentored them, with the people that have brought them along, then I'm also lowering the costs. So there's a great economic reason for doing that. The other thing is, it flat out is the right thing to do. And for Simmons, You know, we've been involved in communities all over the state and now in many other states where we take an interest in the community. We have to. I mean, those of you who use us, use our services, you give us one of your most prized possessions. You give us your wealth. And you expect us to take care of that and be a good steward for you of that. Right? And we want to give back to the community. And it's the absolute right thing to do. Just as a matter, if I look at every employer that's here today, but if you think about it, if every employer in Northwest Arkansas, if every employer in Arkansas took on one apprenticeship, what would that mean for the changed lives of the individual and the families that were involved in that apprenticeship? You know, because for many of them, they're looking for, what can I do? Where can I work? You know, what role will I have? How can I be of value? And to show them that there is a way that, and to give them the opportunity to say, I can be really productive in something that I really like, it's worth it just for that, even if it was a break even economically. So for me, what I would say to my fellow employers, it's a good deal. Economically, it's a good deal, particularly when you take into account the money that the government is willing to give you as part of this grant. The economics make sense. The second thing I'll tell you is in working with Lee and with Lonnie and others, I came at this very skeptically because I'm a dinosaur, and anyone who tells me I'm from the government and I'm here to help, it's like the government is nothing but a big bureaucracy that does not spend money efficiently, right? And we all know that private industry spends money a lot more efficiently than government. So I was a skeptic at first, right? But I'll tell you, the people I worked with in this, I applaud, because they have made it so easy for us to do what is the right thing to do, both because we're involved in the lives of people and the right thing to do economically.
Thank you. Before I move on to Karen and Bill in their roles in this, those two companies, Tyson and Simmons, we've got a couple individuals here. I talked about representing where's this audience, who's this audience, where do they come from. So we have the good fortune of a couple individuals that are actually apprentices. And I wanted you to hear from them. I think this is important to the story of what you may be asking and so forth. So Josh, if you'd come up first. Or are you going to, yeah. So Josh, what I want you to do is remember that they come from all walks of life and so forth, and sometimes it comes from within your company, right? So the idea of an incumbent worker or somebody who's already within your payroll might be your next apprentice for a very important role. So Josh, tell us your story there at Tyson.
My name is Josh Lee. I'm currently the refrigeration manager for Tyson Berryville and an apprentice in the journeyman electrician program over at 4C building. Also the local president of the RETA chapter, and I serve on 2 advisory boards for 2 different technical schools. I got my start because somebody told me about industrial maintenance and it sounded cool. I've never looked back. Tyson Foods is taking good care of me. I've got all the training I could. People are paying for it. I'm not paying for it out of my own pocket, and I'm moving up within the company. I'm passionate about getting other guys trained like I am.
Very good.
That's all I got.
Sure. Thank you. Our next individual, Roy Sean, still in school, right? Philander Smith. And so come on up and tell us your story of how you got connected with Simmons.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Roy Sean McClain, a student at Philander Smith College. I'm currently a computer science junior. So at Philander Smith College, we have our statement, which is to graduate academically accomplished students, grounded as advocates of social justice, determined to change the world for the better. And I feel like even within a brief 2 months working with Simmons as an apprentice, that I have been changing the world for the better, because not only am I able to learn more about myself, I'm also able to tell my peers and even my family about the stuff that I've been doing and able to inspire them, essentially. But, so I got my start at Simmons with one of my mentors. His name is Mr. Sargent, and he had helped me get in contact with Simmons, and we went through the whole interview process and gave me initially what was my first real job. And with that being my first real job, there's actually a weird, funny saying going around at my school right now where I need a job, but to get a job, I need experience. In order to get experience, I need a job, and it's just this vicious cycle. But with this apprenticeship, it has really helped me get a head start on that experience so that I can get a job and pursue my future career. Thank you.
Oh, wait. Hey, you got a question? Sure. Indeed.
Oh, I'm 19 years old.
19, okay.
Yep.
Because I know that it's kind of hard to become an apprentice if you're not 18.
Yep.
So, congratulations.
Thank you.
So the reason I think that's important, and we could have probably, escorted a number of apprentices across a number of occupations up here, but the reason I say it's important is because I don't want you to think that there is any stereotype about anything that has to do with where these candidates come from. I want you to open your mind to the fact that we're talking right now about cybersecurity, and why wouldn't we find veterans coming out of Little Rock Air Force Base that have kind of that mentality to defend? They come equipped, they're ready to go to work, and with a little bit of additional skill building, why they wouldn't be able to walk right off of that during separation and transitioning right into civilian life. I mean, that's just another example. The idea that we're not saying this, you heard it earlier, and I have to be real cautious about this, that this is not a play that apprenticeship or college. This is not a thing of competing and saying, well, we used to do this and now we do this. This ecosystem blends it all. The ability to collaborate and figure out how a 4-year university connects to apprenticeship, right? Or whether it's the community colleges that have already been serving you well, or maybe it's a training provider like NATF, or there's a number of others that within these occupations, guess what? Bill's going to talk about one company just signed on, right, FIS. They've been doing, like Blue Cross, entry-level training for years, but they never thought about the idea of how to couch that as an apprenticeship, right? So I'm going to turn that now over to both Karen and Bill to share a little bit, because they play a role not just as an individual employer like Tyson and Walmart, but they're kind of an intermediary, right? They're representing the small person, the small company, medium-sized, large as well. And so, that audience, those groups of companies need help, right? They don't have huge HR and recruiting departments necessarily. And so how do we fill that role? So, Bill, I'll start with you, and then Karen, you kind of take that and run.
Lonnie, I'm going to tell just a short story since I'm the oldest person in the room. But you got me to thinking, if we would have had computer science or IT apprenticeships 35, 40 years ago, I think we would have made good use of them. All the bigger banks were in Little Rock in those days. Now they're up here. But we had a computer department of about 15 programmers. And usually there were 3 openings because somebody else in the city had offered them a job. And we got together and said, we got to quit doing this. So we went and hired a bunch of freshman college students that wanted to be in computer science. And we put them on the night shift in the back room and taught them operations. But gradually they became not only our best programmers, but about 5 or 6 years later, they were running the place. And the one word that comes to my mind is loyalty. You build an awful lot of loyalty from those people, and you get loyal too, because I think we paid for their junior and senior year college tuitions because they showed more than just potential. They were actually doing the work. So anyway, how's that fit into ACDS? Well, ACDS is really looking at the IT occupations, right? And within the last year and a half, we realized that there are an awful lot of opportunities for apprenticeship within the IT occupations. Software development, cybersecurity, data analysts, networking, help desk support. So what we've done is we've become a certified sponsor of apprenticeship with the Department of Labor, and we're going to take that in 2 directions. One, there are going to be a lot of companies that want to do their own apprenticeship in-house. and we'll just be a conduit to make sure that they get to the right person, which is mainly Mark and Lee. And then I just step aside. But we were able to do that with FIS, another company that I worked for. They've had really an apprenticeship program for over 50 years, started by Walter Smiley. And they hired 24 to 32 college graduates every year and put them in a 12-month training program. And if they did well, they'd put them in another 12-month training program, which was really management and soft skills. But the first year was all technical. And FIS is turning that into a very nice apprenticeship program. Even though they hire people from all over the country, for the first 2 years, they live and work in Arkansas. So that's about to happen. My boss is Charles Morgan. He started Axiom, now he has First Orion. And not able to find the right kind of skills, he started an apprenticeship program within First Orion. And the Department of Labor registered that late last summer. So Lonnie talks about going from awareness to interest to commitment. When you look at the apprenticeship program, ACDS has gone all the way where we are committed and we're all in. And frankly, it is exactly what we should be doing. ACDS needs to do other programs. We got to work on all the way from graduate school to pre-K as far as our supply chain for talent. But we need to start with apprenticeships. And the reason is it's the closest we can be to the corporate demand. So we can take people with potential, give them very specific training that the employer dictates, and they can become a valuable employee in a very short period of time. And that's why ACDS is going to work on apprenticeships.
Great. Karen, you've been working as an intermediary and trainer and so forth, so I think you got, again, a broad coverage that you can kind of mention here. So,
like I said earlier, just in Arkansas alone, we are the training provider, the sponsor. We're the ones that has the standards of apprenticeship for about 2,000 companies just in Arkansas. We do everything: electrical, plumbing, HVAC, sheet metal, painting, CNA, IT generalist, medical secretary, tool and die maker, and you can imagine it goes on and on and on. The one thing that I want to point out is, I made the comment earlier, and all the different occupations that you just listed. Guys, there's over 1,300 occupations that can become an apprenticeship program. And I know you're being hit with a lot of data, and you're probably sitting there and thinking, why am I at this meeting? I work with a high school. I work with a career center. I'm a community college. I'm a university. I'm an employer. I'm an apprenticeship rep. Well, that's really what makes all of this really work well together, because the very first starting point is the employer. And, these employers sit down and they'll come to us and they'll say, I need TIG welders, I need MIG welders, I need, whatever the need is. And the very first thing you have to ask that employer is, okay, what would your ideal, and I use the comment all the time of a pink tutu wearing widget maker, okay? It doesn't really matter what the occupation is. The employer identifies what would their ideal candidate be able to do when you complete this training. If you provide that employer that ideal training program, because you can't walk in and say, have I got a deal for you? Here's your training program, take off with it. Because it's going to be a failure. You go in and you find out what exactly they're needing, and you design the training program to best fit what that employer needs. As long as you're developing what exactly they've asked for, it's a win-win situation on everybody's part. If you're a high school representative, who do you think is going to be building this future pipeline? We have high school programs right now that are linked with registered apprenticeship programs to where students are getting high school grade credit towards registered apprenticeship programs. They're no longer sitting in a high school in the afternoons taking all these elective courses. We now can get them released from high school so they can go work for these employers, receive high school credit, receive registered apprenticeship credit, and they're also getting paid work experience. If you're with a community college, we have a wonderful program that's in Mountain Home, Baxter International. They have a mechatronics technician apprenticeship program, okay? Baxter is the employer. That's where these people will receive their on-the-job training. It is for incumbent workers. This is for employees they already had. They just needed to raise their skill level. They are attending the community college at Mountain Home, receiving their technical instruction training there on site. Now, it's a weird schedule. Some of them go at 6 in the morning, some of them go at 9 at night, but that community college was willing to work through those scheduling to work with those employers. And then the National Apprenticeship Training Foundation, being the registering agency through the U.S. Department of Labor, we take care of all the federal paperwork, tracking the on-the-job training, tracking the classroom training, and then we're also partnered through ADWS with some of the federal grants and stuff that's paying for that program. Take it one step further. Let's say you're here with the university. Right now, if you complete an apprenticeship program in a machinist, tool and die making, electrician, you can take that journeyman certificate of completion and get 32 college credit hours towards the program. For example, if you become a journeyman electrician, you decide you want to be in electrical engineering, they're going to give you 32 college credit hours, and it's not going to cost you a penny of money. How many of you in here think that an electrical engineer that actually knows what to be an electrician means? It's a little bit more valuable of an employee. So, that's kind of the key. Everybody plays a key role. If you're in here from, Title I, adult services, youth services, you need to be referring these people to these employers. If you don't have the connection to the employers, refer them to an apprenticeship program, because I promise you they do have the process in place to refer them. Someone made the comment that it takes a village. That's absolutely correct. But you just have to keep in mind that you've got to allow the employers to be the driving force behind that. If you design a program and you plan on doing all this training and everything's great and wonderful and you're going to front load everything, and then you go to these employers and say, have I got a deal for you? Yeah, they'll probably hire them, because right now it's so bad. If you can walk, talk, chew gum, and pass a drug test and breathe, you can pretty well get a job if you want one. And you're laughing. I'm going to tell you one story that's 100% going on right now. We have an employer down in Dumas, Arkansas, okay? They need guys, there's a difference between being a MIG journeyman and being a MIG manufacturing setting, okay? So let me verify that right off the bat for those of you that's not familiar with the terminology. SFA Holland is a manufacturing setting, okay? So these people that go to work there, they need to learn the very basics of MIG welding. They basically weld MIG on a flat surface where it's on a 22-degree angle, and they just have to run 3 welds through there to hold the metal plates together. And then they also have to MIG weld on a horizontal. That's it, okay? The machines are already set up. The tips are put in, the wire is put in, the gas is set up. So but they start out at $17.50 an hour in Dumas, Arkansas, okay? They can't hire enough people. So sometimes I use the word drug. I mean, actually, that's what happened. We got coerced into going down there and just seeing if a pre-apprenticeship program would work. So we worked with the workforce people. We got to have 15 people to start the class. We had adult education was involved in the recruiting. We had workforce services involved. We had out-of-school youth. We had the reentry people. I mean, we were running ads. This is when the class starts. It's no charge to you. We meet on Saturdays, 8 to 5. If you complete the class, you're basically guaranteed a job, because during this training, we start them out with soft skills. We do OSHA 10 certification as far as safety. We go through first aid, and then we get into virtual welding. Sorry, if you can't pass the virtual welding, we need to find you another job. But if they pass that, then we have a little shop that we basically put up. It's a portable building. We put it up every Saturday morning about 6:30. We take it down about 6 o'clock every Saturday night, because they're actually doing hands-on MIG welding in that shop. Do you think we're teaching them MIG welding that they're never going to use at FSF Holland? No. We're teaching them exactly what that company needs for them to be productive when they hire them. Now, when they're employed, they'll start in the registered apprenticeship program, which means we're going to teach them all aspects. But right now, we're concerned with getting them employed. This is supposed to be an 8-week program. I've only got 8 people left in class because they're hiring them. You know, they're coming by the training site. Well, you know, Karen, he can already do that. Send him over Thursday to do an interview. We interviewed him Thursday. We need him at work Monday morning at 7 o'clock. I have 4 people right now living full-time in a hotel in Dumas, Arkansas, because I can't find housing for them. Because all the housing in Dumas is low-income housing. Guess what? If you start out making $16.50 an hour, they won't even allow you to rent from them. So now we've got a housing issue. So when I say it takes a village, it takes a village. Housing? Why would that even enter your mind? In Dumas, Arkansas, you can't find somewhere to live. So now we've got Arkansas Rehabilitation Services, because now we're needing more and more people, and we can't get enough people to fill the class. It takes everyone. Everyone has a role to play in making this successful. But I know I keep harping this, and I keep saying this. Guys, we opened our doors in 1992, and I was very, very naive. Yes, I just told my age. I just turned 55 last week, and I'm still preaching the same sermon today that I was preaching in 1992. But the reason I preach it is because if someone had have offered me an apprenticeship opportunity when I was 16 years old, I wouldn't have made some of the decisions that I did that took me almost 10 years to straighten it out. I'm very fortunate, but apprenticeship works for your current workforce. It works for people you're trying to put in a pipeline. It works for your incumbent workers. It works for those people that show up at your job every single day. Because right now, that's one of the biggest things that we have trouble with, is people that is willing to come to work and, you know, pass a drug test and be there at 7 o'clock, not pull up in the parking lot at 7:15 and think, oh, well, that's okay. You know, because that's not. Some of the numbers, and I don't know if y'all realize this or not, but right now, and this is some federal stats. I have the Arkansas stats if you would like them. I just didn't bring them. But someone was talking about increasing your retention rate. Nationally, right now, on average, 97% of the apprentices that complete their journeyman with an employer end up staying with that company. Did y'all hear me? 97%. Right now, I promise you, if you ask these employers in the room, for every 10 they hire, they are tickled. They're ecstatic if they've got 1 or 2 of them left at the end of the 90-day period. The second thing that I wanted to, if you do a survey of the employers that have registered apprenticeship programs right now, 97% of them would recommend to an employer that it has been a beneficial program to them. So, you know, if the stats support it, the employers support it, it's just a matter of getting everyone together. And, you know, some of the people that I've talked to today, everyone wants to think that registered apprenticeship is this huge monster. You know, I can't get my arms wrapped around it. Well, it's really, that's one thing that makes everybody get so confused, is because it's really an ABC process. A being the employer, B being able to figure out the training and how you're going to get the people to get into it, and C being the fact that all the partners have to come together to get these people through the training program and work in a true partnership and get off of this, well, they're from my area, they've got to go through NWAC, or they're in my area, they've got to go to NTI, or they're in my area. Who cares what area they go to? You know, we need to be concerned, and he's smiling at me. Yeah, I'm known for being brass, so. But, you know, the main thing is we have employers screaming and yelling every day. I do not have the people I need to do this job. One of my contractors called me 3 weeks ago. They turned down a $3.5 million contract. I'm not talking about a contract they had to bid on. I'm talking the contract is on their desk because they cannot hire enough people that they felt like they could complete the contract, so they turned it down. That's $3.5 million that left the state of Arkansas.
You know, Karen, that really sets the stage for moving to the next phase of this, because you heard things that we can all relate to. I mean, you hit it on the head. One of the things that happened in the last probably 12 to 18 months that I had the good fortune to be involved in was the state of Arkansas did something called an asset mapping effort to try to understand everything that comes into play relative to supply, demand, and all the parts and all the organizations that fall into the middle, which we'll call equipping the workforce, right? And Mike had mentioned some of the things that you'd been doing at Tyson, and we knew of the Baxter scenario and some of the other, what I would call, you know, best practices or things that probably aren't just a localized success, but something that would have the ability to be replicated. Because I mentioned earlier, you heard me say, we don't want any of you thinking that you have to start from ground zero, that you're starting from scratch, right? And the idea is that what is it that this group of folks that Karen refers to, the village, if you will, from a resource point of view, what I want you to understand is that there is going to be things that you can build from, whether that starts with Lee and a standard that says something already exists, to knowing that there's already existing curriculum and training, that there's those that have gone before you to understand what those wage scales are. But guess what? In every one of those categories, audience and content and how you're going to be delivering and how that's going to be flexible for you and so forth, customized, and even the outcomes you're looking for, we know what the questions are. But we don't know what those answers are until you're at the table giving your particular situation, because that's what makes it your own program. You know, so I'm going to just say terminology-wise, Karen introduced the idea of going and providing pre-apprenticeship. So whether that's, you know, sometimes people get confused between internship and apprenticeship, right? The idea is that we got interns. In fact, you started as an intern, right? I mean, so, and we at Blue Cross and many of these companies, the idea of an internship is wonderful. You know, the idea that somebody who's already knows the path they want to go down goes and gets some meaningful work experience, and you as an employer provides that. However, that's an educator-driven program because that person is still kind of connected to the educational system, and it's nice to add that to the resume, but there's a little less commitment involved there than when we talk about apprenticeship that's an employer-driven program. You've heard that multiple times today, and when you drive that, you're the one that's deciding what that curriculum's going to be. You're the ones deciding exactly how that's going to play out, whether that's going to school at 9 o'clock at night or whatever, and you work those things out. And Mike, you've been down that path, and we asked you, what does that look like in terms of how are you trying to expand known programs, and where is it going, and what would you be willing to share with others who say, golly, we're in the same boat as they are? So tell us a little bit about what you told that group.
I think every employer has two options to hire and to get the qualified worker that they need, and it's either obviously an internal candidate or an external candidate. And so I'll speak to the external piece first. I think that maybe 15, 20 years ago, the best option there was to find that, what I term the purple squirrel, that ideal candidate. You can look that term up. It's actually well known through talent acquisition and recruiting world. But a purple squirrel is a candidate who's ready to come into your company and today with no other value be ready to perform in every function level and participate in bringing value to your company. And they're called purple squirrels because they don't exist. And so looking at that external candidate, what we would do is we'd find somebody, we would swap sheep then. We would say, okay, well, you've got this experience, we'll give you an extra quarter to come across the road and work for us. So we managed our business for 20 or 30 years like that. Well, then you start finding that there's obviously skills gap. You don't hear that phrase, and I hate to use it because it's so overdone, but it hasn't been filled in yet. So the external candidate for us is really just meeting the candidate where they're at. And they might be in high school, and they might need to be able to plug into a career technical education field in a pathway that exists through our CTE programs, and then take them to where we need them to be through possibly a pre-apprenticeship program so they can get their related technical experience inside the high school workspace. Maybe it's some articulated credit where they're starting to get some vocational and workplace experience at a career center or a secondary center or some type of training program. And we find a lot of success in taking that to the next step. So it's basically trying to move everybody one step forward. If they have graduated high school and they don't have necessarily the career experience that they need, then offering them a training that would prepare them through many of the third-party institutions. It could be through an OEM, a vendor, a for-profit learning institution, or possibly some of our very, very skilled and excellent two-year schools. And so taking them to that level, what we identified, though, for us is that we do things a little bit different. We're very specific. Of course, a lot of the trades need the foundation and the core competencies, but we are a disassembly, reassembly manufacturer. And so often we have to take things apart to put them back together, to add value. And I'll apologize in advance if you've heard me use this experience of value added before, but the numbers change every time. And I like to mention that a leg quarter is worth 75 cents a pound. If we take the leg and the thigh apart, it's worth $1. If we debone the thigh and bread and batter, it's worth $1.50. If we then put a special sauce or recipe on it and partially fry it, then it's worth $2. If it's blessed by a Russian Orthodox priest ready for export, it's now worth $2.50. And if you take that same thing and apply it into a water jet that cuts into a dinosaur-shaped nugget and put it into a meal kit, it's now worth $3. It's the same chicken. It's just had different things done to it to make it worth more. So we've applied that process as a company to our product. And what I was hired to do was to apply that process to our people. And the most important part of any business has got to be its human capital. It's got to be that resource. And you start with quality, something that meets FSQA, something that meets everything that's required of that wholesomeness of the chicken, and do things. Now, we're not taking our team members' bones out and skinning them necessarily, but you're still adding value to them, and we do that through an option once we get that identified. So I've got several metrics and KPI that I take, and we've identified in our company 60 critical locations that we have a need to hire our technicians from. And I mentioned that a competent maintenance person takes 5 years to develop. That person makes a mistake, they hurt themselves and the person next to them. The electrician, the automation tech, the digital workforce, the robotics tech, if they arc flash in FPA 70E in a room, they affect everybody in the room. But if our anhydrous ammonia people, if our boiler people, if our fire suppression, or anybody that's related to a thermal process we use called a Fulton system, if they make a mistake, they affect people in a half-mile radius. As a company, we can't accept that risk. Not only can we not accept that risk, we have to have something that's proactive, that's mitigated, that we can go through and make sure we have competent workforce. And it's like having an engine room that Josh manages, and to replace his engine room and his compressors may cost $100 million. Well, you're not going to hire a taxi cab driver to fly a Boeing 727, are you? I'm pretty sure you can buy an airplane that size for less than what Josh has in his engine room. And so a $10 an hour, $15 an hour, $20 an hour person is not going to cut those high-end expensive decisions that's going to affect a community. So I can stand on the roof at Green Forest and look over the fence and see an elementary school. I can see a nursing home and a daycare and other places and subdivisions. So we have a responsibility and obligation to our communities that we're in. And so to do that is through education. The best ways that you can promote retention and develop workplace satisfaction is through investing in your team members. And so taking that concept and applying it to, at a free will choice, making it available for adults to be able to stay in the workforce and keep getting education, or to develop a pipeline of talent. So one of the strategies that we do for external candidates is to set up programs, and not to Tysonize the world, not to be exclusively for Tyson, but to come alongside of a 2-year, a high school program, a community college. It could be a Votech in other states. It could be a 4-year institution. Find somebody who's doing something great, who we have a relationship with already, developing talent for our team, and we go and accentuate equipment. We offer suggestions. We go in as guest speakers. We don't just write a check and give it out, as nice as that may be for some. We do that as well as some assembly required. We help them set the programs up. When we get the robotic grant from Office of Skills Development, and we get that. I was at U of A Morrilton yesterday putting their robot together. They will come to NTI and get trained on that robot. We're going out and putting these practices, we're being a leverage, a support, and a resource for the institutions that make the people that we need to take the next level. And so we have that external bucket of developing talent. Our internal bucket is something that existed before I came to Tyson that I'm now over, that deals with robotic training, automation training, PLCs, VFDs, HMI, every level of hot metal thermal process for welding, for working with the equipment, and very specific types of equipment in a stainless steel world. So we have training programs that with actually 70 plants that have a maintenance training supervisor, that their job is to go through and train current Tyson team members how to work the foundational skills. And so they get that on a computer, they apply that to a simulator so they can have a safe place to fail. I think that's something a lot of educators miss, is that we need a safe place to fail and how to rebound and take risk and take things in a safe place. And so they get that experience on the floor, they demonstrate that, they get the on-job training, they go out and get the vendor training, and so we continue to just move that person through the process at their pace to allow them to be more successful. And we find our numbers for Tyson is we have on the production side, basic level entry, 43% turnover, which is huge. Our maintenance technicians have a 20% turnover within our company. Our refrigeration technicians have a 10% turnover. And what you're seeing is the more training they get, the more experience they have, the more they're worth, the more they're compensated, the longer they stay. One of the best things we can do as a company, your company or the company you provide for, is to train the incumbent workers, to value them, to invest in them, and to make them worth more, because it's kind of the rising tide effect, right? Raises all ships. And you can't think about, am I doing it for this company or that company? And the reason I came to Tyson was because they're willing to support a program that gave me essentially a blank piece of paper and said, do what we need to do. And that opportunity to invest in people, one of the things I'm very passionate about. And apprenticeship is one of the best models, pre-apprenticeship, fantastic. And so what I really discovered was this final concept I'll end with, is the idea that what I did in Silent Springs didn't exist in the nation. And it did take many people to make that happen, so I'm not taking credit for that. In fact, I felt like the Lord gave me the initial concept when I wrote it out. But this idea of training adults at night, the same thing that high school students get, using that space, being able to develop a pre-apprenticeship for industrial maintenance mechanics that would kind of come out. I really think that a lot of vocational programs do it right, but maybe the wrong way. They say, okay, you want to be auto body, you want to be diesel mechanic, okay, you want to be welder, okay, you want to be, and the 16, 17-year-old has to pick. That's a hard thing for them. So I came at it from the idea of a sampler platter. I wanted to try different things, find out what they like, what they don't like, find out, well, I didn't even know about this, where was that on career day? Come back and get those experiences and be able to leverage that as options to be able to make decisions that can affect their workforce. But if you think that you're, looking back now, it makes more sense, but I doubt that many of you are in the role that you thought you'd be whenever you were 17. And some of you took what I call the straight line, the shortest distance between 2 points, and others of you took the scenic tour, and it took a while to get there. But that concept is something we have to facilitate into a friendly place, a safe, guided place where a teenager, who we call boys and girls, these are men and women. These are young men and women that need the respect, they need the encouragement, they need the tour guide that believes in them, that can invest in them, and help them throughout a 60-year commitment that they're going to have to their families and communities. And that's what I'm thankful to be able to provide.
Mike, that's great. And, I'm sitting here trying to picture myself sitting out there in the audience with you. I love the stories that all of them are telling you, right? Because they relate. But one thing that keeps coming back here is this idea of, talent pipeline, right? The idea of connecting to the existing sources, which is your educational system, which means, K-12 education, the high schools. Is Patty here? Patty Methvin with yeah, there you are. Hidden right back there. So, the local workforce area, local workforce development board, and Patty's that for Northwest Arkansas. When you think about work-based learning, everything you've been hearing from these folks, right, is the idea of equipping and positioning some young person to kind of figure out where they might be headed. And what I mean by that is where they might be headed, right? The idea is that you've just hit on it. It's hard to make a decision. Boy, it would be great if we had, LaRonda was going to be here from UAMS, and they're putting in place an apprenticeship program that's actually taking registered nurses, RNs, and moving them to BSNs. And as I've come to find out, there's a nationwide statistic that says they would like there to be a much higher percentage of those nurses that have that particular credential. And that number is not as high as it needs to be in Arkansas. I won't say what it is because I'm not sure exactly. 42% needs to be something else. And so this program is going to really contribute to that. But guess what? Just like Mike was saying, that doesn't just affect them. It's interesting, UAMS, both an employer, but yet also an educator, right? To be part of that, they're connected to a lot of the other facilities in healthcare around the state. So that is a movement that doesn't just start and affect them. It started and affects everybody, right? And that's very important. And the reason I bring that up, Patty, about all the folks that are in the room, and I attended your event recently that saw a ton of other employers that aren't maybe all here today, some may be. And the idea is that what do you want to participate in as an employer? You know what your outcome is, but you've heard it over and over again today. It isn't just one of those things where you're just going to flip a switch. It's the participation in the community with these kind of programs and positioning yourself to be able to connect to those candidates and those students at a much earlier stage than ever before, right? And so if you're talking about a role that you're going, have they ever done that for a teller? Have they ever done that for, and pick whatever one of those other occupations that you mentioned, because you might be saying, well, that's fine for those 4 up there because they know exactly what's going on with those things, but they don't know my occupation. They don't know. No, the point is there isn't any one of those out there. Karen said 1,300, registered apprenticeship occupations. I doubt that you have one. There might have been a few. You uncovered the turf management that started out as, what was it, an agricultural kind of thing? I mean, things can be kind of, tweaked a little bit. But for the most part, whatever you're talking about, you're not going to be the first.
Lonnie, we're getting ready to start up one for a mortician.
Yeah, there you go.
Think about it. Taxes and dying, you're not going to get away from it. Yeah.
People are dying to get in that profession. No. Well, this is really important because we have a certain amount of time set aside for really detailed questions in the breakout sessions, but I don't want to stop engagement right now, so the answer is yes. We want you to ask your question.
I think it may be to Karen, but so I come from an age when, I come from an age when DECA and VICA were 2 programs in high school, and they fit a lot of purposes for folks who weren't college bound, and they were preparing people for local work. Any thoughts about DECA and VICA coming back as institutionalized programs at that level?
We're actually taking it one step further. We just got approved. We have our own, for those of you in education, you'll know what this means. We have our own AppScan code now. You can do youth apprenticeship for junior year and senior year, first and second semester. And basically what it does is whether a high school offers a CTE program or whether they offer a marketing program or whether they offer a career orientation, as long as it's skills related, and again, it can be for a mortician to a tool and die maker, then during their junior year, they're getting that training and they can get apprenticeship credit for it. During their senior year, then they actually go to high school in the mornings, get released, get high school credit just like we did in the VICA and all that. Now they are taking it one step further because the only way you can do that, you have to be linked to a registered apprenticeship program. Same thing with these pre-apprenticeship programs that you have. Be very careful because there's a lot of people now, because everybody's kind of getting on the apprenticeship bandwagon. Don't be one of those that tags a class you're providing as pre-apprenticeship and tell these students, go to this pre-apprenticeship class and then you can go to one of these employers. Because if you're not linked to our standards of apprenticeship, and if you're not linked to those employers, when you walk in with this pretty little piece of paper, sorry, it means no more than, something you pick up out in the parking lot. But that can be completely alleviated by just linking with, and I saw some of the black cards floating around, the ArkansasApprenticeship.com cards. If you don't know who, different apprenticeship programs are in your area, you can look them up on there and link with them. Your high schools can link with them. They can work out a program with that. Call the state apprenticeship office. They can help you with that also.
I've got and also I want to specifically say DECA and VICA are alive and well in high school programs today. So VICA has a name change. It's called Skills USA. There are numerous career technical student organizations out there. FFA hasn't changed. FHA maybe you'd recognize from FCCLA now. HOSA for the health and occupations, the ABTA for audio technical visual. There's several programs like that from FBLA to many that are alive and well and thriving in our CT programs across the state.
Great question. So you see how that teed up a number of things that are connected to that, and so I'll tee up the next question for one of our panelists based on that. So what you're kind of talking about is associations of like-minded folks who have a common interest to try to build this talent pipeline, right? And so whatever your particular occupation or what industry, whether that's the Bankers Association or the Manufacturing Association or whether that's in IT, right? Steve, you have been the, I guess, chair for some short period of time, at least, of the new chapter. Tell us about the organization that has started in Arkansas about the Society of Information Management.
You know, in the IT world, regardless of what industry you're in, there's certain skills that you just have to have that transport from industry to industry. And you have common problems. And part of the problem in IT is finding the people. Because in IT, you get some strange birds. You really do. And one of the things with that is they like to move around a lot. And so you talk about employee retention, you talk about employee churn. It's significant in the IT world because most IT folks really are always looking for the next cool thing in IT. And so there are common problems that we face. Well, in the IT world, there's an organization, Society of Information Management, primarily made up of CIOs or executives in the IT that have been across the country. Arkansas has never had a chapter of the Society of Information Management. So several years, about a year and a half ago, one of the leaders here, who was the CIO down at Murphy USA, thought, well, why don't I get a bunch of people together and in this area, and let's see if we can form a chapter. So we've been in the process of forming that chapter, and it is now a officially recognized chapter where we are bringing people in, IT executives from across the entire state together. Where am I going with all this when it comes to the apprenticeship program? Every one of us face the same problem. IT people are hard to get and hard to keep. And so what I've been trying to do with my peers in the IT world is say, you really got to look at the IT apprenticeship program. You know, for all the employers in the room, we all face quarter to quarter, year to year, the economic pressure of making the numbers. And so many times we get focused on the short term. I will tell you the apprenticeship program is a long-term play, but it is a game changer and it's a game changer in the IT world as to how you keep and retain individuals in a very mobile society and in a very mobile industry. Yet when I talk with many in this area, they say, well, you know, it takes a long time to do this. It takes a while to get it started. That's right, it does. And the benefits are down the road. But I'll tell you this, the old way's not working, right? For those of you who take a look and say, I am today challenged with trying to find the resources and to keep up with all of my needs in my business. Now, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. The old way's not working, right? We have a skill gap, we have a labor shortage, and if we continue to do things like we've been doing in the past, we're going to find ourselves as employers grumbling a year from now, 2 years from now with the same problem. The apprenticeship program gives us the opportunity to move the needle, gives us the opportunity to do something different, and it addresses things not only now, but it will address things in the future. And that's why we're excited, and that's what I'm trying to get all of my fellow gearheads and wirehead geeks in IT excited about is there is a different way to address the IT problem in this state by getting it at the people-to-people level. To me, the really important part of the apprenticeship is not the technical skills that are gained, because those technical skills will change over time, right? And it's constantly moving. The real glue, the real factor that holds this thing together is the people-to-people connection. And what we have found is, there's the individuals in our organization, as Roy Sean has gone into our organization, the first thing he's doing is he's moving around in the organization. And he's meeting a lot of individuals, and he's finding out about their jobs. But they're meeting him too. And they're getting excited about the fact, and they're coming to me saying, where's the next Roy Sean? When can we participate in this? And it's not just because of skill set, it's the people-to-people connection. So for the employers in the room, what I would say is, yes, this is a long-term play, but think about the alternative. Continuing to do things the way we do things today, that doesn't make sense economically.
One of the things, and I want to kind of have you thinking a little bit about what some of your questions are, whether we get them in here before 11 o'clock or you get to your breakout session and be able to ask it in a very detailed way there as well. But what you've heard is this idea that where some of these kind of things grow up from, what's kind of the catalyst for certain things. I will say that I had the good fortune of reading a report that was produced, I think a couple of years ago now, Bill, right? The Blue Ribbon Commission report. Governor was involved, many of the other leaders around the state. Certainly those folks, I'm sure, that were very participative from some of your big players up here in the Northwest. But the idea was, and I'm going to let Bill kind of take this and run with it, was around what are we anticipating to be the kinds of needs that are going to be pervasive in every company, no matter whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in banking and financial, list goes on, right? And that was the fact that this technology, computing, and analytics was going to be pervasive, and that has to find a different way to be brought forth to students and so forth. So, Bill, that's kind of what was the catalyst for maybe your organization and how that has played out as far as what the board sees and where you're headed with your role in this country.
Yeah, I'll try to be succinct and brief here, but the Blue Ribbon Commission report was published at the end of 2017, and it gave a number of statistics of what had gone on in Arkansas from 2010 to 2015. And round numbers, we were generating in 5 years 12,000 IT jobs, but we also had 5,000 openings. So if the next 5 years look like the last 5 years, we may generate another 12,000 jobs, but we also may be falling even shorter in staffing those jobs. The good news was we brought in about half those people from out of state. The flip side of that is there were probably Arkansans that could have been trained to fill those jobs. So the Blue Ribbon says, let's start a 501(c)(3), let's staff that, and there's about 3 different things that we need to do. One is we got to focus on computer science, IT professionals in general, but then we also need to focus on data science. And for the last 6 months, I've been traveling around the state. There are a number of companies that understand the value of data, that understand the value of analytics and predictive and risk management. I'm sitting next to one of them. But there are also probably 75 or 80% that are either skeptical or don't have the bandwidth to set up that type of data analyst laboratory. So we are actually going to set up a data analyst laboratory and be a resource to corporate Arkansas in terms of education, but also in terms of bandwidth to actually help them look at their data and learn how to analyze it. The gap in the computer science and data science has been around for 30 years. There's people in Arkansas that have, on a volunteer basis, have been dedicating an awful lot of their time and investment and bandwidth. I think the time is now, and it's going to take more than one village. It's going to take the whole state worth of villages to address this. But I think the potential and the result could mean an awful lot to all of us.
Very good, Bill. So we already got a question ready to go? Okay.
I'm Jean Generou. I work with Camp Alliance, and we filled a gap for veterans and currently serving service members in the state. And we're trying to implement a program this year that I'm kind of in charge of. It's called the Career and Resource Readiness Expos. And we tie those with active National Guard drill weekends. And we put employers in front of our currently serving National Guard members so that you can access that audience. So one of the things that I've noticed is you're talking about target populations, we've talked about education facilities, but our military service members are our hidden population across our nation. And not only the military service members, but their dependents, their spouses, travel with them. They go to training as 18, 19-year-old, let's say. They come back and they're pounded, go to college, go to college. Well, the military trains you in a very hands-on apprenticeship way. You watch it, you practice it, you go do it. And in a safe environment, hopefully you don't blow anybody up. But a lot of our service members in the Guard and Reserve in this area come back and they want a different skill than they've learned in their training. So apprenticeship is covered by the GI Bill. So if you're an employer and you have a group of employees in your work base, or you want to attract veterans to your company, you should be thinking about apprenticeship and putting your veterans to work. It'll either pay for that training for your company or it'll give them an extra paycheck each month. I don't know what employee wouldn't be happy having an extra $800 in their pocket each month. Our goal is to make sure that our veterans and our currently serving military are not underemployed. They come back from training and they love being a service member, and suddenly they love their family and they are going to have a family, so they got to get to work. And they end up not going to IT for U of A attendance because they have to make a living. So I'm really excited to hear about the IT apprenticeships and all these other opportunities I want to educate our service members about, as well as our employers that I come in contact with to set up our expos. And oh, by the way, we have 4 in June we're scheduling right now. So I look forward to working with all of y'all. I want your cards.
We have a very successful Camo to Khaki program initiative at Tyson that has worked well to be able to develop that exit strategy for a very skilled and reliant group of people.
You know, I served on active duty for 8 years, and I remember very clearly it was a seminal moment when I got out. Vietnam was still fresh in the nation. It was a big wound. I remember the first interview. I sat across from someone in a suit who held his nose up at me and said, "You did 8 years in the military. What possibly could you know about business, and what could you contribute?" I literally got up, looked at him and said, "You're a jerk, I'm walking out." Because he knew so little. He knew so little about the military, you know, and I remember my time in, but even today, the teamwork that is taught there, the leadership that is taught there at every level, whether you're enlisted and you move into the non-commissioned officer ranks, or you're an officer and you move up to the officer rank, the leadership that is taught there, the military has some of the finest teams in the world. They know what teamwork is, because their lives depend on it. And so for any of you that aren't involved in hiring from the military and our veterans, get with it, because there is incredible talent out there. And, you know, and the other thing I will say, I haven't said before, that one of the things the apprenticeship program does is, and I applaud all the academic from high school and college that attempt to teach the basics. But one of the things, the apprenticeship is about see-do. And part of seeing and then doing, when it gets to the company, is also how does a company think about things? And one of the things apprenticeship does is it tests the individual's ability to problem solve, but also to just think. And you know, what we need more of is people that know how to think on their feet. And that's what the apprenticeship does. It takes you from the academic world that says, here's the book answer, and says, here's how I think about it specifically in this application, in this job, in this company. And one of the, I'll tell you, going back to the military, what this all connects is that's one of the things they teach in the military. You have to be able to think on your feet, and you have to be able to apply in the situation, in the now situation. So thank you for working with our veterans, and for all of you employers, like I said, if you're not looking at veterans, you ought to be.
And Lee, I don't know where Lee went off to. There he is. Lee can contest to this. If you are working with a registered apprenticeship program, you do not have an option. I'm so thankful that that is a built-in, but when you develop your standards of apprenticeship, which we keep saying that terminology, guys, it's nothing more than the rules and regs that govern everything we do about apprenticeship. When you do your standards of apprenticeship, there's a big old section in it. Veterans receive preferential hiring. We give them credit for their service, the training that they've gone through. So if you link with an apprenticeship program, preferential hiring for veterans or active is non-negotiable. It's already set up. And GI Bill, the program just has to get approved to utilize it. But we were talking about this earlier today. I don't think there's a program in the state that's not approved through the veterans.
Very good. Okay, now what we're going to move to, but I don't want to do it too quickly. I know that the dynamics of a large audience sometimes, if you still have another question that we think, whether you think everybody needs to hear it or not, it's probably a good question. If you want to ask it right now, I'd rather take advantage of all of us in the room. If not, we're going to, yes, we do have a question.
Please wait for the microphone.
He's coming.
A couple things. So we have the card, we can turn that in, but the next steps after this are what exactly? And is there a cost to the employer at all? And what kind of time, everyone's doing more with less, and what kind of time would we expect an employer who is interested in joining this program and participating would need to be able to provide?
Well, I want to field that first, and then you guys can do this. So the intent of the Next Step card was that before you leave today, make sure that whatever questions you feel like you need to have answered, this was an awareness session, right? And I think Bill even quoted these terms. But awareness, as you become aware now, have you gotten interested enough that you'd like to take the next step? And what that really means is that you need to think about that in a one-on-one kind of setting with some folks from ADWS, with some folks from apprenticeship organization. There will be a kind of a commitment to come to you and follow up and on a one-on-one basis, get the right players in the room so that you don't start down a path and then somebody at the last minute is involved in saying, oh, we can't do that, right? You'd rather have a unified front that gets through all those things. How many HR folks do we have in the room? Quite a number, right? And that is such a good thing, because I've been in other states and been working through these programs, and a lot of companies have gotten down the path, and guess what? The HR person hasn't necessarily been in the room till nearer the end as opposed to the beginning. And oh, how much of a difference does that make when you're all in the room talking about what does our company need and how do we work together to ensure that talent meets the job demand, which meets the business demand. Now, from the standpoint of your questions of how quickly can something start, do you have a microphone? I would love to say, as being just somebody helping out, right, that the answer would be immediately. But, there is a process, but I do think the answer is closer to immediately than not. Yeah. But I'm going to let you address
Well,
it.
and we want to react as quickly as possible, because what, I kind of opened up with today is that utilizing these grant funds, we want to be able to support a lot of the activity that you may be thinking about. We have that, kind of for selfish reasons, as well as being able to help our employers. The selfish reasons are the grant asks us to produce certain numbers as part of performance, is the grant when we make the application. So we want to be sure we reach those goals. And kind of on your side of the equation is you need help now with some of your skilled talent choices that you're making and how you're looking at workforce development strategy. So we want to connect all of that. And so we want to follow up with you as quickly as possible and try to connect you with the grant funding that can provide assistance for that. So, no.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Well, what do they pay? What are we
They
talking
have to
about?
pay the apprenticeship wages.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I was thinking in terms of just our training costs that we offer through the grant, but the wages is your responsibility. Yeah.
And that's good to point out that that's the kind of detailed questions that we want you to ask before you leave, right? What is the role and responsibility of the employer in this? What's the role and responsibility of, let's say, the workforce services agencies? What's the role of the various training providers? How do you begin to engage on this customization process to make sure that it fits you? What if you aren't the only one? So let's talk, Joe, Northwest Arkansas, you got, all the chambers were sponsors of this event today, right? And so you're representing a number of employers from a number of what I'll say common industry sectors, and maybe everybody's thinking some of the same things, right? So what becomes something that doesn't necessarily have to be one company going it alone, but an ability to potentially team up to say, we all need some industrial maintenance folks. Mechatronics, that's something we need to be doing. Or whether it's the things Karen was talking about very specifically about, golly, we're growing like crazy here, so what is the plan for what we're gonna do to address the welders? And, I could go down the list, right? So part of this is that we're trying to gather the information from you that says, this is the true demand, this is where the urgency is, and yes, if we need to work with you individually, we'll do that. But if we need to work on a common cohort, like Bill's putting together in your current first cohort for ACDS, the idea is there's a lot of small companies that don't have the wherewithal to go after this by themselves. But once it was opened up to the fact that their next step could be coupled with others that say, gosh, we all need those Java developers, or gosh, we all need that down in Camden, right? Those defense contractors down there talk about what is it that they're all struggling with. There's not enough resource. How do we tie to the high school system to begin to do pre-apprentice, which leads to, guess what? That takes the consortium, if you will, of a number of companies to look at that. It doesn't preclude that Lockheed can't do something on their own, but it does mean that if there's a way to do something together, that might make more economic sense. That's some of those questions along this process that we're talking about that's already got a model, 4-component model, that you ask those questions, and for you and for your other companies in your community, they might be the same answers. Yeah, Joe.
And Lonnie, just to clarify, before we leave the large session, I want to reiterate, there is a network, a cohort starting to form, and to any of the employers or the educators or the continuing ed groups in the room that would very much like to be a part of that conversation. There was a question asked about next steps. Yeah. From a regional perspective, I would love to help get you included in that, so please find me. I'll share a business card, I'll share a number, I'll share whatever I need, and I'll do my best to get you connected with the right folks in the room.
That's perfect. That's efficient.
I also want to, it's kind of like, how do you get from here to Arkadelphia? Okay? There's about 50 different routes that I can take to get from here to the corporate office. How long it's going to take and what kind of program you're going to end up with is strictly based on the needs of that employer. For example, if you are wanting to implement a registered apprenticeship program that is already active somewhere in the state of Arkansas, you actually can sign as a signatory employer and start a registered apprenticeship program come Monday morning. Now, if you're wanting to design a program that is the 1301 program that's not currently listed with the Department of Labor on the registered apprenticeship list, then that is a totally different process, because everything we do is following national standards. So when someone, whether they go into the industrial manufacturing technician program, the tool and die program, the mortician, the CNA, it is a national certificate of completion. So there's a minimum set of criteria that you have to meet. So if you're wanting to do something that rapidly, then yes. If you're interested in applying through funding through ADWS, which is a federal grant, Then there's a grant process you have to go through, there's approval process, your people that you're wanting to train has to go through. And so you're looking at best case scenario, probably 120 days before you could start doing training at your facility. If you're just wanting to do something like mine, you have 3 or 4 companies, existing occupation, less than a couple of weeks, you can actually be up in training. So it's depending on what resources your individual needs to tap into, and whether you're wanting to go all the way back to tapping into 8th graders and linking with a high school, or if you're just needing immediate training for your incumbent workers. Is that?
Good clarification. Good clarification. Yes.
Please, we are being videoed. It'd be nice to have your question on it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathleen, HR Manager at Daisy. Quick question, what is best practice to get your pipeline for the apprenticeship program? If it's not your incumbents, if it's external individuals you're looking for?
High school CTE programs.
If it's a skills trade, we call skilled trade, the machinists, the tool and die makers, the welders, for some of your, the organizations he mentioned earlier in these high schools, whether it's HOSA or whether it's Skills USA or whether it's the old FBL, at least they're getting some type of training on a high school basis. And then more and more industries and employers are doing just like we're doing in Dumas. They're backing up the registered apprenticeship program to one more model to where, prime example, I mentioned Batesville High School earlier. The registered apprenticeship programs actually are providing a classroom, a true credit hour classroom training for the juniors at Batesville High School, where they're year round. We have class every Tuesday, Thursday, and Fridays because of their crazy schedule, to give them those soft skills and those technical skills to move them up to the next level, because in that area they didn't have the CTE program to connect to. Another big avenue that no one taps into is Arkansas Rehabilitation Services.
Absolutely.
They have field offices all over the state, and they take it one step further. They usually have 100 to 140 people sitting in Hot Springs at the ACTI Training Center. And guys, they are doing training in everything from maintenance to office management to the medical trades. And that's a resource that we've never tapped into previously, but my employers are to the point now, we're tapping every resource that we can to continue to build that pipeline as much as possible.
And that's really very important, I think, what she said there about, you notice your particular occupation and demand may trigger what might be that best practice that we would pull out of the toolkit, right? It is not a one-size-fits-all answer in all cases, especially with what you heard today about the various organizations that represent some of these audiences, and you just may not have been aware of that, and so how to plug that in may say, oh, if that's what the audience you're looking for, there is a best practice, and here's how you would connect to that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
One underutilized resource is the Job Corps campuses.
The Job Corps campuses train 16 to 24-year-olds in various trades. It depends on each Job Corps. There's at least one in each state. In Arkansas, we're blessed to have 2, one in Little Rock and one in Ozark. So you might want to look at them and get with their vocational development specialist and see who's graduating that month.
You got a question in this corner, Lonnie?
Okay.
It must be a good one.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. My name is Stacy HAR-BER, and I was going to keep my hand raised up until someone was like, here she is, here she is. But I'm very passionate about this, guys, and I've been a business owner for about 8 years with a 501c3. I've partnered with my sister, and my sister is not here today because this is real. Everything that you guys are talking about is real. She's not here today because we just took on a logistic and transportation contract, and because we don't have the proper workforce, she's driving the vehicle now. And we just said yesterday, we don't have any answers. My sister started a therapeutic art company. We have a therapeutic art studio in Fayetteville, and we actually have a licensed counselor on staff. And we work with the teen population, juniors, seniors, and we also work with adults. So Arkansas Rehabilitation, the Workforce Development Center, Job Corps. I've worked with all because I've worked with them as a 9-to-5 myself. So if I didn't stand up today, shame on me. But as a small business owner, we are literally running our operation out of our pockets. Okay, I sometimes have to go back to work and work a 9-to-5 just to stay alive. Okay, because I am HR, that's my background. My sister, project management, we have a wealth of experience. So what we have done is joined together to help the teen population be able to compete in the workforce. And the problems that we're facing, I love what you said, Mike, is that we provide a safe location for a person to fail and recover with no judgment. And right now we have a staff that we can't even pay, but because we're providing therapeutic services for them and we're providing soft skills, life skills, and those hard skills, they're willing to stay on with us. So we do, and I had to write it down, we do office management, administrative assistant, project management, retail sales, interior design, logistic transportation we just took on, facility maintenance. We teach OSHA and we teach health and wellness. We teach a wealth of things to get these people back into the workforce, especially our teens. We don't have the money to pay them at all, and they're willing to stay on with us because we have decided as employers to take a chance on them. You know, we work with the low-income environment, the population that is labor-rich, but they may not have the skills, but we're taking on that need to identify their skills so we can transition them into an apprenticeship program. We have been told, you know, that I think you all are a pre-apprenticeship program. We don't know what we are. We just know that my car is taking people day to day to employment agencies, the Workforce Development Center. I'm trying to put people in the Job Corps. Wherever the need is, if they can't afford college, that's what we do. And we provide on-site training for these individuals of life skills, career readiness training. I work with incarcerated adults as well as the juveniles in Benton County and Washington County. And these kids sit in front of me every day and they don't have any hope because they don't know who's going to take a chance on them. The Marshallese population, the boys told me in the juvenile detention center is that they're called the lost boys because nobody will hire them because they feel that they don't have the skill set or the need to compete in the workforce. And so we have taken that on through what is called talent mapping through the arts. And I'm just here today because we need help. Like I said, my sister right now is driving our transportation service because we didn't have anyone to fill that position. What are we? Are we a pre-apprenticeship program? Are we apprenticeship programs? Whatever we are, we can fill the need.
You know, it's interesting, and I'll tee this up for maybe a couple folks from various portions of ADWS to speak to this, but early on, you heard me mention, and the panelists support this idea of there's roles to be played, right? And we talked about where would that role come into play? Is it with the audience? Is it with the content and curriculum and the delivery of the education and the training and the actual, OJT and assimilation, if you will? And then what is the responsibility of the employer, right? The wages, driving the whole process because this is your program. I would put what you're talking about, albeit that you mentioned you offer curriculum and training, as what we call wraparound services, meaning from a standpoint of supply, meaning the candidate side of this thing versus the employer side who have to figure out, do I have a mentor to apply? What is it that I'm going to drive in terms of their competencies, capabilities, things that I'm going to measure whether or not that apprentice is being successful. At the same time, you're talking about things that are inhibitors to a supply pool being available, right? And for employers to be able to find access and availability to those candidates. I think that I use a term called wraparound services, whether that be once they get into a program, how do they get there? Or the fact that they may have some certain circumstances that were part of their past that they need to get past. And you're covering some of those kinds of things. Mark, I'm going to let you maybe speak to that.
You said it well, Lonnie. I mean, that is part of what I'm understanding her saying.
Yeah.
She's certainly doing a
And that's a very important role in this process that most employers, and I can't speak for HR, so maybe an HR person who wants to step up and say, this is our view of these kinds of things, is you talk about that at your SHRM National Conference, right? And so tell us about how an HR from an employer would look at that and say, boy, if we can find support for some of our folks in the community, you know, how important is that?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Judith Tavano, and I'm with the local chapter of the Society for Human Resource Management. And absolutely having access to learn just today that such a program exists is astounding. So that for any HR person, such a resource would wrap around so many needs. Angela, something?
My name is Angela Robinson, and there is another supply chain or people, and that's the people over 45 that have been dismissed because their position no longer exists. And they've got a lot of years. I'm what is known as a returnship. I'm 68 years old, and I'm back at work because I'm still alive and well. And so there you go. But there's a whole group of us. I'm back. But there's a whole group of people that are getting laid off, and they have to reinvent themselves. And they come to me and they say, what do I do now? We do not need another real estate agent on the street. Okay? But so when you think of apprenticeship, think of the folks that are over 45, and 55 is a new exit for a lot of companies. So if you're a company looking for somebody, think of that group, think of the morticians. Who else would be a great mortician than somebody who's got one foot in the grave? So anyway.
Wow.
And the other thing is that I keep hearing about the employers, the programs. How do you reach the people that are looking? And that is key because there's a lot of ways to reach them. So I just wanted to introduce what are we going to call it, Judith? Returnship to the apprenticeship.
I like that.
So my name is Angela Robinson. I'm the publisher of the Job Guide, and I'm back connecting people to whatever's going on in this world.
And you know, you can't help but deny that one of the things that I see constantly, and Joe, you probably see it, and you guys sit on panels, and others that are in big, sometimes it's just a matter of hosting and having one of these kind of events because somebody just doesn't know what somebody else has got available. The more that we can create this kind of awareness and then communication and follow-up, the better off we're all going to be. So again, that next step card that you asked that question about, the bottom line of today was we hope that some revelation might have happened. We got great information from a couple existing apprentices, great panel, you heard from the Lieutenant Governor. But really what's important is what are you going to do from the time you walk out the door? Is anything going to change? We're making available, and I think that's a statement that I hope I'm okay saying, you've heard it from people, is that the next step is, hey, I want to learn more, or I think I heard enough, we're ready to take a next step. Who's there to support me? And so this idea of statewide capacity, I know that the Lieutenant Governor and Steve Gunthorpe were here, and that conversation has come up, whether it's Arkansas Economic Development Commission, whether it's various folks that I've come to meet in various audiences, and guess what? The concern for capacity is being addressed. We know that could be an issue, but we're not going to let it be an issue, right? The idea is that whatever resources it's going to take, we know they're out there. We just got to be able to communicate and connect the dots on that. And you know, I'm not just saying that as being something that I've experienced it, right? So in other states, this same kind of thing was where everybody was at, and guess what? The explosion can happen. I appreciate all your questions, and I don't know, Mark, if we should even break out into the specific groups if we can keep getting value from everybody hearing everybody's questions. Now, you know, that's a leap because to some degree, there's a side to me that says sometimes large groups, if it gets down to where it's only 20 or 30 and you're birds of a feather, that you might feel more comfortable to ask your question, because I don't want you to leave any stone unturned. And that was the goal of the day. Do we have any more questions in the broad audience? Yes. Yeah, he's coming.
Where are you?
Great.
One of the challenges that our company has had is in our apprenticeship program is keeping people in the program, because they start strong. I think somebody mentioned they started off with 12 and ended up with 2 or whatever. So I know we're maybe a little deeper into the weeds on this question, but I'd love to know how companies like Tyson might keep the people in a 4-year program. And the flip side of this, can we shorten the program to where it's more of a 2-year apprenticeship instead of a 4-year? Because what we found, the mentality of most people going into apprenticeship is more money. I mean, they want to make more money now. They don't want to wait long-term for that reward.
Absolutely. Well, let's let Mike start. Go ahead, and then Lee might be able to help.
I'll mention for Tyson, and obviously if it's a licensed trade, then the time frame is a non-negotiable. But I will, on the other side of that, there's only really 2 in the state, electrical and plumbing. HVAC being a close third, those are non-negotiable. 8,000 hours OJT, certain mandates set there. But for industrial maintenance, which it does apply to manufacturing, and for PACE would be a good example, we were able to get that done as an accelerated apprenticeship program, and then even moving that into the pre-apprenticeship. So I thought maybe just a quick definition of what some of these things is from a layman's term. So once you have an approved curriculum, an approved instructor, and a Department of Labor agreement, then if they're not employed in the field prior to graduation, that's pre-apprenticeship. If they have graduated a program and are working in another profession but want to be maybe an electrician, they can come in, I believe, Bob, with 1 year and do a craft skill instruction. And this is at least through NCCER. And then the third part would be to be a true apprenticeship in a registered program, you have to be employed in the field doing the OJT alongside of that. And so that maybe helps some of you understand a little bit more of the vernacular. But to answer your question, I was really hoping you had the solution, and then I would jot that one down, because it's a plethora of things. I think it starts off with a good example that Josh is doing with our Berryville constituents. So being a manager of people, he doesn't want his apprentices who need the instruction, he does not. He goes to find out what they're doing, supports them, and they see him as a leader doing what he's asking them to do. Thumbs up. The second thing is they do it on shift work, and so they're paid to be there. They actually get to go and do that. And then for the particular program they're involved in right now, it's about $650 a semester that counts towards some of the tuition reimbursement that the company pays for them. And so to complete the program, of course, we're doing it new. This is just the first year that we started this program at Berryville. We don't know what retention is going to be from that. But we've already seen excitement. We've already seen people that are coming out. How many do you have, Josh, in the class? Are there 15?
I think there's about 14 or 15 of us, yeah.
And could you speak maybe to how the hourly guy feels about that within the company, to answer Ken's question?
So the question is, how do you get them to stay? It's hard for us. It's hard for us to go after we've been at work to go to a 4-hour class, then go home and take care of your family. I don't know the answer to how you get it to stay, but us, we're a department. There's 15 of us there from 2 different plants. We get to communicate with each other. We get to network. We get a little bit of fellowship, and we get the education we want. Like he said, I don't particularly need a journeyman electrician license because I've already raised to a point in my career where I just don't. But I want it. I don't need a license to treat wastewater, but I've got it. That's the kind of guys you want in your apprenticeship, the guy who wants the certificate, the guy who wants to obtain that goal. If you want the goal, you're going to go get it. If you're just there for more money, you're probably not going to go get it. You know, me and all the guys in that class, they're already making more than most of the people in Carroll County. I'm not kidding. We are some of the highest paid individuals in the county. So they're going to further what they know, make their job easier. They're already doing the electrical work. But now they'll know how to do it safer, more efficiently. Like I said, they're already electricians. They're just not certified electricians. Pride.
It's about.
Character.
What's that?
Because they'd have your work ethic.
I don't, but I have a 5-year-old that's going to be a refrigeration man. He just don't know it yet. Yeah, it's coming.
And registered apprenticeship builds, I know you hear this a lot, but guys, it really does. It builds pride, it builds your character, and, it's a matter of getting to complete the program. More and more companies, I mean, the old school method, and I say old school because I'm right there with you, girlfriend. They used to work full-time, and then they would have to go to class 4 hours a night, August through May, at least they're off through the summer. Most of your companies now, besides the electricians and plumbers, because again, that's state licensed, a whole different world. But in the advanced manufacturing in the medical fields, they're integrating the classroom required training into the OJT, because especially with the millenniums, guys, they're not interested in working 70, 80 hours a week and then going to 4-hour class. When they hit that 40-hour mark, that brain, because it's off. So more and more companies are integrating their classroom training into that 40-hour work week, where if they typically work, because a lot of companies, especially in the advanced manufacturing side, they may work 3 days on, a day off, so it's a very fluctuating schedule. So that required classroom training is integrated into their regular work schedule. And then in addition to that, give people credit for what they know. Just because it's a 4-year program, don't make them go through information that they already can master. Give them credit for that.
How do you know that? How are you assessing that?
It's called a skills assessment. You take what's in the standards, and 50% of it is written exam, 50 of it is actual hands-on, because some people do good at written, some do it skills-on, and if they can combine those scores and achieve, you can get up to 75% credit towards the registered apprenticeship program as long as it's in your standards of apprenticeship, excluding plumbing and electrical. Okay, excluding, I cannot say that enough, because in Arkansas, both of those are licensed occupations. And not only do they have to do registered apprenticeship, they have to abide by the state laws for licensing requirements, and CNA is the same way.
Take a stab at the second part of your question. Can you make it shorter? Yes, the answer is yes. There are 3 types of apprenticeship programs. One's a time-based program where that's a 1 to 4 years. You can't, the apprentice has got to be in for that time. There's a competency-based where you complete the competencies and you're done. The minimum program for registered apprenticeship is 1 year. That would be a competency-based program. And there's a hybrid program, which is a combination of the two. You get a minimum, maximum time to complete the work processes. I'm authorized to reduce by 25% a time-based program. So automatically get from a 4 to a 3 year. Now, we've heard, a time-based was always the way you did it. And 5 years ago, older, we've heard from employers, and there are more and more, there's a, Urban
Institute?
Yeah, the Urban Institute in DC, the U.S. Department of Labor has contracted them to make as many competency-based programs as they can that were time-based. That's baby steps. It's not happening really quickly, but it's in process, and the goal is to make all of the time-based into, all those 1,300 into competency-based. We're not there yet, but there are more being added all the time. So we're listening to employers because that tends to be the thing. We don't want to get it to the point, though, where the apprentices are rushed. We want them to be able to learn it well, to be with a mentor in that occupation so that they can learn what they have in store for them in life, part of it, and to have a well-rounded completer when they come down to the time where they're done with your program, and that's going to benefit you. So, yeah, the answer is I can reduce it by 25% when I approve your program, and we'll just, we'll do it any way you want if you want to put it in more areas or not. The work processes, there's 2 parts. There's work processes you complete for on-the-job training. Okay, those are pretty rigid. They're, you gotta at least kind of touch on them. We can reduce the hours in some cases and move them around. And then there's a related technical instruction, which is the classroom part. That's totally flexible. As long as you have some sort of recognized curriculum or, it's a database, computer learning, whatever, we can work with you as far as what you want to do for those classrooms. DOL recommends 144 hours per year of the curriculum. That's basically 1 3-hour night per week, at minimum.
What's required of the instructor's qualification?
You pick your instructors. If you've got somebody that's a subject matter expert in the area that you're talking, all we want to see is that they have some classroom technique training. You can do that, and there's several programs that you can complete that in just a few days here and be certified to do that. So we would like for that person to know what they're talking about in the occupation they're teaching, but the employer is the one that chooses the instructor. If you designate them a subject matter expert, we don't question that. We do question whether he's had classroom technique training or not. Once they get into classroom, once you satisfy that requirement, I'm happy.
The question that came up there was one that I know is on your mind, right? Is we've heard about retention numbers, right? They are much higher. My personal experience at Blue Cross is we had 84% retention on those 450 apprentices, and that was 20% higher than any other hiring channel that we had. Contract conversions, regular campus hiring, whatever, I go down the list. The other thing, though, that when we first started this, and so I don't know if I'm answering this or just giving you a story, but it's something for you to bear in mind. And it does happen across the country, and it depends on maybe which occupation you're talking about. So let's maybe qualify it that maybe this is more of the I hate to call it white collar and blue collar, let's call it new collar, that apprenticeships in an office setting. But what we did at Blue Cross was the first 5 years of that program, we had what was called a repayment agreement. Now, we weren't getting any federal funds, right? We were covering the training and the wages. We were doing it because it was the right business thing to do, and it was giving us access to talent differently. We had incumbents coming into the program that were from claims processing now going into IT, right? Upping their salary by $20,000. Great deal, right? But there was no guarantee that other than they had some potential capability, they didn't have a degree. They might have been a degree in music or no degree at all. Didn't matter, right? Sitting side by side with somebody from University of Arkansas or Georgia Tech or Clemson. The point being, though, was that they were gaining something that had value in the marketplace. Bill and Paul both said this, right? In IT, and this is true for a lot of your other occupations you're talking about, once you kind of build a little bit, then all of a sudden you're more marketable out on the street. So what we found was we were building up these people's capabilities, and they were talking to Colonial Life, and they were talking to Aetna, and they were talking to whoever, and they were offering them 10 grand more, and off they went. Well, we knew and anticipated that was going to be the case because that phenomenon goes on in every industry and every occupation. So we put in place a repayment agreement that was prorated for a period of time, right, that was incentivizing them to stay or disincentivizing them from leaving. And over that 5 years, 2. We were bringing in 24 to 36 new folks. I told you the numbers, every start of the June of that program. And so 2 left. One of them repaid it. One of them tried to go through kind of litigation to say, I'm not going to pay it, whatever. But the rest of them realized, and they talk amongst themselves, this camaraderie issue amongst peers and others that you are in class with and you develop a bond with, right? That is more meaningful than I can ever begin to tell you. And I think it's reiterated over and over. So once you start this program, and whether your cohort is mingled in with others in a community or it's just all within your own company, there is something about that, and you watch how that progresses over time. And guess what we did after 5 years? Got rid of it. We didn't need a repayment agreement. It was something we kind of had as our hedge to start with, and other companies will tell you that they've maybe tried that. But you know what? You do it right, and you start to see that they talk amongst themselves about how they move into management and how they got all these career opportunities, and they start saying, hey, were you part of that apprenticeship program? Oh, yeah, it's almost like a club. It's an important thing. And now we've got people in our organization that have moved, after this number of years, into senior levels of management. And so is there an appreciation for what that program has meant? Absolutely. Were we able to get rid of a repayment agreement? Yeah. Yeah, it was a strategy we thought we were going to need, and as it turned out, if you do it right, you don't. Now, you can ask the question, are there other things about how to potentially do that? You're hearing from the real people that are living it today, and those are the things I would want you to consider. So, good question. Yes, and I wanted to mention, we have an employer who just started an apprenticeship program. Before I ask you this question, we do have 2 signing events that are going to happen at the end of this session today. One is Simmons Bank signing as an employer and a sponsor, and then we have ACDS signing your sponsor agreement. That'll be happening with Lee. You know, one of the things that is a question for you as you go through this as a company, how visible do you want to make the fact that you are one of those companies who is putting yourself out there as a company that does registered apprenticeship? You may want to not make it highly visible, but if you do, you got a lot of people that want to tell your story, right? And how meaningful is that in your community when you're stepping out and saying, look how progressive we're being? Because in some ways, it isn't the old apprenticeship, right? This is modern view of apprenticeship, and we want you thinking in that regard, and that puts you in a really important position. So you have a company. I would like you to tell us about it and the fact that you're getting ready to start your apprentices.
Yes. I have to say that I am kind of a hybrid. I have a local nonprofit bakery. We provide training, trade and soft skills to people with disability, intellectual disabilities. That's a challenge by itself. So I'm both an employer, but I'm also a newbie when it comes down to be an apprentice registered program. The challenge that we are facing right now is, honestly, you have to hire the employee. And in this case, you're dealing with people with intellectual disabilities, and there are a lot of stereotypes about hiring them. So who is willing to hire them when they haven't been trained? They haven't been able to work because they are never given a chance. They have never been seen or heard. So what we try to do in our nonprofit is to provide them with those skills, to equip them with the right tools so that they can transition into a permanent employment later. In our on-the-job training, and that's what we're trying to develop this program with Patty, is how do we get them ready so that employers like you can see the talent that today nobody wants to see or nobody is giving them the opportunity. So it's very unique because we're dealing with a nonprofit, at the same time an employer, and you know, as a nonprofit you don't have money to hire too many people, and that's what is happening right now. I'm hiring most of them, but at the same time, I'm looking for employers to give them a chance to go. So that's what I have been working with Patty. How do we leverage the funds that are out there for me to train more people so that more employers like you will give them a chance? So it's a very unique way. I would say it is a little bit more innovative in how you can do it, but you can think about different ways how to use this program, how to partner with an employer, how to make sure that you having the right skills set in your program so that they are more marketable when they end.
Very good.
What's the name of your business?
Sorry, yeah, this is a promotional too, right? It is Rockin' Baker. It is located in Fayetteville on Mall Avenue across from Noodle Restaurant. And we're open to the public Fridays and Saturdays, 8 to 4. And the rest of the week, we are providing baked goods for restaurants. So what you see here, we call them the cadets because it's Rockin' Baker Academy. The cadets are working along with me, so they're really being trained on the job, how to be a team member, how to even talk. Some of these people with autism, they don't talk to each other. They don't talk to people. So here we're teaching them those skills so that they go out and they can get a job. It could be that they're never going to be a manager, but that's not the goal for them. For them, it's just to go out and get a job. It could be a janitorial job. There is nothing wrong with that. The low employment is affecting all the industry, and hospitality is a huge one. So we are providing them basic skills. Dishwasher. Somebody needs to do the dishes in a restaurant. They are more than suitable to do that. They just have to be given the opportunity to work and be part of the community.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your question, getting the clarification. So, next question. Okay, yeah, sometimes I've been missing hands. I apologize for missing the hand earlier.
Josh, you said it great. You said you have a 5-year-old son who's a refrigeration tech. He just doesn't know it yet. My question's kind of along those lines is what is being done because parents are telling kids you have to go to college, you have to go to college, you have to go to college. We're getting that hammered, like as a millennial, I had that hammered into me my whole life. And that's not the case. So it's great that we're all in here and you're kind of preaching to the choir a little bit and that we understand the need and we see the importance. But how do we take this message outside of the industries and into the homes for the parents so they're okay with saying, you know, my child doesn't have to go to college to get a good degree or get a good paying job? Like, what can we do to address that issue? Because until that's done, you're really not going to see it, because the testing is for college readiness. It's not career. It's supposed to be career readiness, and hopefully it's shifting towards that a little bit. But that's the message kids are being told, is you have to go to college, and it's doesn't necessarily always is true.
And they're pushing the AP classes now in middle school.
Yeah,
I have a fifth grader, and I just got an email saying they're pushing pre-AP for sixth grade.
And the questions that I get as an economic developer, RFPs are asking, what are you doing at the middle school level for career readiness, not college readiness?
Great question, and you know, I'm going to, at some point, probably share a perspective on this, but Patty, I'm going to let you, Dave,
Former chamber president, so I'm going to put my chamber hat on for a minute. But many of the chambers, especially in Northwest Arkansas, are working on trying to get that message out to parents and to students. And they're creating books and they're creating things that are, you know, when you go to the college fairs and they've got the real cool displays and stuff, they're creating displays and books that are appealing to our students for career and tech ed kind of stuff. So look to your chamber for those kinds of things, because I know that Springdale has done it. I know that Fayetteville has done it. You are. Well, so you're doing that. I know that we're doing that in Boone County and stuff like that. So, yeah, okay. Where'd he go?
got done? And I may see if you guys want to respond to this too, but here's what, I'm going to give you an outside perspective of what I dealt with in South Carolina. So it was probably 2008 or 9. I'd been there for 5, 6 years, and we were realizing this epidemic of IT was bigger than any one company or any one university was going to tackle. Short story is the fact that we realized that the issue was starting in K-12 education. And the question you're talking about, remember that we're all representing these different occupations that we think would be viable. You know, just sitting here right here and our two folks right here, you got totally different paths that they've taken. And we don't even have, you know, a female representative here, but the point is, what are they being shown and what do they think might be their career aspirations? I'm just going to give you one piece of advice, that the chambers are doing their thing, organizations, I think industry wants to reach down. You know, you heard somebody say, if we're not doing this, shame on us, right? That we would expect, like Lieutenant Governor said, that this pipeline would just produce a product and magically it would be right. But I would take advantage of what he asked or what he told you. And that was, can I help you? And if so, because in the state of South Carolina, it started at that point to start the community. Yeah, parent universities were great, but the Department of Education, who had been promoting, and again, I'm not saying this as pointing a finger, there's no difference between a student at the stage of saying you're college bound and you're career technical ed, right? As an employer, we want to think of that whole pool as candidate pool for us. I don't want somebody separating that audience for me before it's appropriate. And so it took kind of an organized front, a unified message across the state that started with the governor and lieutenant governor and others to make sure that that was the message going through education, higher ed even. You know, this is not again, a negative comment about higher education. That is an appropriate avenue for many occupations. But we don't want a whole lot of folks ending up in that environment with no direction and with $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 worth of debt, right? And so this learn and earn model that you keep hearing everybody stress today is so vital.
I don't know where you're going to school for $60,000 or $80,000 for a 4-year.
I just tried to keep the number low, saying maybe some of it got paid, you know, yeah, it could be far worse. But
Nothing went for 1 year. There you go.
We're all sensitive to this, yeah.
Here we go. Here we come.
And was there another one too? I want to make sure I don't miss hands, yeah.
Hi, my name is Juliana, and I work for HR at Walmart. So to answer some of the questions there, I saw the need that we had internally. We're struggling hiring people for maintenance. But I didn't know where to reach or how to start, so I decided to help with the community. When I mean help is allocating time to go to schools and see, hey, how can I help you? I need people, and I need them to start learning early on what supply chain is. Nobody knew that. I will go to job fairs, and they'll be like, well, but I want to be an engineer. I don't want to work in a warehouse. So supply chain is a big title, right? There's so many positions that we can offer, not just one, but many. So volunteering, I was able to find and meet actually Joe. I met Joe there, and then I met Mike. And then when I spoke with Mike, I found out about apprenticeship, which is something that we haven't thought in the supply chain, the warehouse especially. So that's what I'm here today, because I want to learn more. I want to see how can I bring that to where I came from and implement it. But as well, going back to the community, I was reached out by Joe and said, hey, would you mind coming with me to these panels to the high school so we can go and answer questions for the students, and they can learn what kind of benefits your company have to offer for them, not just, health vision, not just that, but what about scholarships, what about funds, what about money? So I volunteer, and I volunteer my time to help Joe to do that. So if you are intentional, you have to be intentional on going out and find out how it can help, because you have to be part of the village. Recruiting right now these days is not sitting behind your desk. We have to get out there. We have to become more aggressive with recruiting, and this is what I'm doing now. I have a recruiting team actually, by the way, but you cannot pass down intentions, because the concept might get lost in translation. So I want to have more diversity on my maintenance team. I don't have that. So I go to the floor first inside my facility and ask everybody for diverse backgrounds, Spanish, English, and I wish I could speak Marshallese, but I don't. And that skill is very hard to find in this area. I heard someone else saying over there that they need interpreters. When I was looking for a job as an interpreter, it was not paying my bills. The only thing that I could find was 4 hours or 2 hours, or maybe translating for a judge. But the course was so expensive that was not going to pay my bills. I have to reroute myself. So the only thing I want to share with everybody is you have to be intentional. I'm an HR manager. I work in an office, but I realized that behind my desk, I was not going to change the world, right? At least my world. So I'm here and up there and not out there. And if you guys really want to help your company, reach out to Joe. He needs more volunteers to go out there and speak with high schoolers, maybe middle school, and try to change it. But we have to be part of the help. We have to be part of the change.
That's very good advice. Very good advice. We have the other question in the back. David, right there. It's nice when you have folks that just pop up out of the audience and give you just what was needed at just the right time. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Hello, my name is Tammy Springwater. I'm with Hope Cancer Resources, a local nonprofit here in the Springdale area. I'm actually here today a little bit as awareness. One, how this might fit into our organization in the long term, being a nonprofit. Secondly, my husband is an educator in the area in Rogers in the CTE field, so taking information home to him today. And then thirdly, I work with a lot of young adults in different areas, especially faith-based opportunities. And so I think the question I have now, from what I've heard, how do we, I have young adults through faith-based opportunities that are in college fields that maybe they get to the junior year, they're looking for, and you and I have talked a little bit about that, Lonnie, looking for opportunities in the field, so they're not waiting to be one of the graduates that is looking to get a job and can't because they don't have the experience yet. So how do we, and kind of to tell a little bit more about that, they look for an internship in the junior year, they take a day off of college, miss some tests, drive to Little Rock, and they find out there's 100 applicants for one internship. There's not enough internships. They want experience in the field. So, and then the young adults that I'm working with in other areas that maybe didn't choose to go to college, I see as very bright, capable people of good character looking to maybe take advantage of these opportunities in the apprenticeships. What's the next step? That's my question. So for college, already enrolled college ones, then also ones that didn't go to college, how do I give them the next step?
Great question. Anybody want to step up and?
Here's the biggest problem that you have. I'm going to take the college students first, okay? And I'm going to step on some toes when I answer this question. The biggest problem you have when you have a junior that, you know, he or she's gone through college, they've already invested a lot of time, energy, and money, and they've pretty well made up their mind what that career path wants to be. Well, the problem is we do receive, because we offer internships at my company, and we're based out of Arkadelphia, so I've got 2 colleges right in my back door. We'll get 100, 150 people apply for those 3 or 4 internships. And when you start talking about them about wanting a long-term career, yeah, they'll go to work for you, but they want to start out at $75,000 to $100,000 a year and never worked a real day in their life. So that's the drawback to the internship side of it, you know. And if more and more of these college students would take, instead of waiting till they become a junior, get these summer jobs at these employers that are doing apprenticeship programs, go in and volunteer for a little while so that they can get to know you, build up those networks. Because if they change their mind, and some of the apprenticeship programs do feed off of a 4-year degree, so target those. On the other flip side of that, if you are working with students, regardless, and someone said something about, I know I laugh every time I look at you talking about your age. Guys, a lot of these apprenticeship programs, we tell the story all the time, whether you're 16 or whether you're 60, doesn't matter. You know, if you go through an apprenticeship training program, it's all the same. If you have students that are wanting to get into, if they're wanting to get a job, if they're wanting to be employed in an apprenticeship occupation, just connect with any of the apprenticeship programs in the area, because it's like I said earlier, with the unemployment rate being what it is, I cannot tell you the number of employers that are begging and pleading for people that they can put into these training programs, but you know, they've got to be able to pass the drug test and they've got to have their transportation to get to and from work. So connect with the apprenticeship programs in your area if you're not having success with connecting directly to the employers.
Here's a question, Lonnie.
Yeah, and I realize we're getting really down to the very end, and I'm going to want to make sure that we really thank these folks when we get the chance, because they're staying up there a lot longer than I thought. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'll start with a thank you. My name is Bonnie, and I run a swim school, which is very, very different than really anybody that's out here. And really, I think my biggest question is there's not really a national certification for swim instructors and things like that. I've actually taken the time and developed my own course curriculum and that sort of thing. And 2 questions that I have. One is going to be, I think, a very quick answer. CTE, you said high school CTE. What is that?
Technical education.
Say that again.
Career technical education.
Okay, thank you. I feel a little bit smarter now. But my other really point is, how do I start with a conversation with you perhaps, or what is my next step in trying to get something like a true apprenticeship off the ground and going with a typical occupation that doesn't exist? You know, you've got Red Cross, WSI, and that's not what we do.
Lee Price.
Yeah,
Pardon me?
Yeah, Lee's here and Mark's here, and hey, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah, so part of the next step card filling out, and everybody's filled that out, right? Show of hands. And you captured a bunch of them, didn't you? We have someone here who definitely wants to fill out a next step card to work and potentially establish a new registered apprenticeship swim instructor. I do know for a fact in my national efforts that a lot of things around athletics and coaching, right? Whether that be what happens today in the current environment, you know, you get, a graduate assistant coach or whatever, and they're moving through, and they're almost an apprentice to a head coach. Right. And so similar as swimming instructors, I'm sure others learn from them, right? And the idea is you're propagating the capability. Exactly. And so that happens all the time, and whether there is or isn't one for that, Lee's your guy, right? And,
if there's not one, we'll write it under an umbrella for another one, and we'll work to develop especially exactly what you need.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Something that we can do. The work process are pretty general. You can apply them in a lot of areas, and we'll do that to get you up as soon as possible, and then we'll work toward writing one. It's supposed to take 90 days to develop a new program. It will not happen in 90 days, more like a year. But there's a process to do that. So if you'll see me, we'll talk about it.
yes, question back there. And we might take one more beyond that, and then just realize all of us are available. We'll stick around. We'll answer your questions. And again, the next step card is to get to that intimate level. So, oh, and then we have our signing ceremonies at noon. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Again, Judith Tavano, and I'm representing the Society for Human Resource Management. And it's not a question that I have. I just wanted to leave people with a little bit of information from the Society for Human Resource Management. We've talked about hiring military, and we've talked about hiring veterans. And the Society for Human Resource Management now has a course for employers. It's free. You can find it on the SHRM website, www.shrm.org, and it's a course that will help equip employers and answer the kinds of questions that you all may have about hiring the military connected.
Wonderful. Well, at this stage, I've said this a million times about the next step cards, but the one thing I want us to do right now is this particular panel. You guys were awesome. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day.
Good job.
What we have now, Mark, and I'm not sure where the setup's going to be, is we're going to have a signing ceremony right here. Okay. Think about this. This can be you next week, next month. We even do signing ceremonies for candidates, right? When apprentices sign up, it's like a recruiting day. What a deal. Thank you all for being here. You bet. Don't forget those next step cards.
They haven't done the survey on the kiosk. Please do that before.
Okay. And there was a kiosk survey. It's probably too late to bring that up. Everybody's moving now.
Before everyone leaves, we want to share our signing ceremony right quick.
Hopefully you heard other things about this.
Lee Price, are you close by? Well, we have a couple of noteworthy programs that we're wanting to recognize. There's Lee. Okay. We have a couple of noteworthy programs that we want to recognize in terms of becoming new registered apprenticeship programs.
We might already have your information.
I'm going to turn the microphone over to Lee.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
If I could have your attention, please.
Yep. Thank you.
If I could have your attention, please.
Great job. Great job. Great job.
Okay, what we do when we start a new program, if we have the opportunity to do it in an environment like this, we will do a signing ceremony. We have 2 new members here. What we're going to do is
everyone,
do Simmons Bank first.
Up front, please.
Okay.
Recording.
This is a set of standards. Okay, that's what you have to start your program. In this, it outlines the whole occupation, the rules of engagement, all that stuff for your standards, for your program. What we're going to recognize today, the first is going to be Simmons Bank has a cybersecurity support technician and a software developer. We've already coordinated between us where Paul has read all the standards and I have, and we know what's in them, and he's agreed to this is what he wants. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask him to sign in a couple of places here, and then I'll sign and we'll have a program.
The community college model didn't get discussed quite enough today, and I wanted you to chime in on that. But
we have our first.
Congratulations.
There's a lot of things going on. I'll talk to you about it and get it from focus. We want to get really involved in some IT apprenticeships. So.
music to our ears, my ears, because there's so much, demand that's building right now. It's amazing how, the SIM organization and ACDS, we're combining all these lists. What we did with Belinda back with that.
Okay, what I have here is a United States Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeships Certification of Registration of the Apprenticeship Program. Simmons Bank is registered as part of the National Apprenticeship System in accordance with the basic standards of apprenticeship established by the Secretary of Labor. And we have the date, the program number, and signed by John Ladd, the administrator of the Office of Apprenticeship.